This story is about how one day something inexplicable fell to Earth. People called this phenomenon burnout. On that day, essential energies like fire and electricity ceased to exist, and only a few survivors have any memory of a former civilization. Cars, airplanes, factories, absolutely everything stopped functioning. There was no more water in the taps. People began to look for ways to survive. But worst of all, the world lost its weapons. Many modern weapons, cannons, missiles, and fighter jets stopped working. The government lost control. Countries became chaotic and lawless with criminals and mafia running rampant. In addition, there was almost no land left that was habitable. However, suddenly places with good climate and fertile soil began to appear. They were called safe zone. Mankind, as usual, began a constant struggle for these territories. However, one day suddenly appeared those who possessed supernatural power mutants. They began to gradually subjugate the safe zone. On the other hand, in the dead zone, where the remnants of the population were hiding, people began to appear, sending subjects to the safe zone for experiments to have a chance to survive. There were also people trying to fight back against the mutants. A hooded man was walking down the street when a monster attacked him from behind, threatening to destroy him. But suddenly there was a girl who easily scattered the mutants with crushing blows. The girl defended the guy using powerful martial arts techniques. At this moment, a deadly arrow swiftly flew towards them. But at this moment, another guy put out a car door using it as a shield. He covered his comrades and the deadly arrow slammed into the metal door. Another guy at that moment neutralized the archer who was trying to destroy them. A smiling guy neutralized a mutant who was attacking them by firing arrows. Suddenly, a giant mutant appeared not far from the company of comrades. Raising its leg, the giant tried to crush the resisting humans. At this moment, the guy with red hair flew high up and approached the monster's face. He delivered a powerful crushing blow and the mutant lost its balance and swayed. After a moment, he collapsed to the ground with a thud, smashing the rocks with his head. He jumped on his chest and looked into the face of the crushed mutant. The power of his blow was enough for the giant to lose his senses and lay on the ground without moving. A few minutes later, the team of warriors was surrounded by a crowd of various mutants. To avoid facing the army of monsters, they decided to escape to the safe zone. They jumped high to fly over the mutants. The giants reached for them with their hands trying to grab them. It had been 5 years since the fire disappeared. The remaining humans were struggling to survive in a new environment. They had to hide in the sewers to avoid the mutants. It was the only place in the city where the horrible monsters had not yet reached. Having set up their tents on the floor, people prepared to sleep. Soon it was going to be dark, and everyone had to go back to their places. Due to the lack of fire in the catacombs, it was very cold. Some people had to sleep on the floor. A little boy was getting chills. He complained to his mother that he was very cold. He had a bad and persistent cough, and his body was burning with fever. The woman hugged her little son, and tears ran down her cheeks. She couldn't help him. The distraught man said that since the fire disappeared, there was no medicine or anything else to help him. They didn't even have water for him, but the water jars were empty. There had been very little rain this year. He said that all the land where there is drinking water is now occupied by the mafia. The boy said he'd rather be their prisoner. At least there was water there. With a slap on the wrist, the man shouted that he was crazy. If they catch him, they'll make him a lab rat. He'll be like a dog with a collar. They'll put him on drugs. There's a 90% chance he'll die. He should be grateful he hasn't been captured yet. At that moment, the frightened people heard someone trying to open the door. The girl clutched her son tighter. The men drew their weapons and prepared to defend themselves. But from behind the door came a voice that told them not to be afraid. He's from the militia. He brought medicine and supplies. A water bottle was slipped through a gap in the wall. The guard standing at the door cautiously peered through the gap to see who it was. He saw a lone figure standing alone with water and medicine in his hands. The guard said he had checked. He is indeed alone and with provisions. He asked what to do. The people decided that even if he's mafia, he's alone and can't handle everyone, and they really need that medicine to cure the sick. The guard began to slowly open the heavy door to let the visitor in. The door creaked open. The armed men watched tensely. The man who entered carried 2 large packages in front of him on his outstretched arms. Smiling, he told them not to worry. He was a militiaman from the People's Front, delivered them some provisions. His goal is to guide them to safety. Frowning, the leader asked, even if he's not from the mafia and this safe house exists, would he be able to protect all these people? Rolling up his sleeves, he answered him that he had already scouted the area and was ready to help. Suddenly, his hands began to increase in size. He clenched huge fists. Transformed, the guy told the dumbfounded people that he was a mutant. The terrified people recoiled in horror upon hearing his confession. The guy shouted that he'd heard about it. Some people volunteered for genetic mutations to be able to save others. Smiling, he replied that the professor who made him like this once said that there were those here who needed his help. At that moment, he noticed a little boy who was coughing very badly. His mother was sobbing and clutching the boy to her, unable to do anything to help. He handed her antibiotics and water and told her to give it to him as soon as possible. She gratefully took the medicine, thanking her savior profusely. Suddenly, a deadly arrow flew past him, wounding the guy in the arm. The crushing arrow was fired right through the front door. The wounded guy shouted to the frightened people to escape as quickly as possible. At that moment, the door closing the entrance to the dungeons rumbled out. Deadly arrows flew at the guy from all sides, trying to destroy him. They attacked him from all sides, and the guy couldn't resist them anymore. In a few minutes, his breathless body fell right at the feet of the shocked girl. The dumbfounded girl screamed in horror as she saw the guy being crushed. A grinning mutant appeared in the doorway. He said that there were so many test subjects sitting around doing nothing. So these little rats decided to hide from them in this place. A guard armed with a huge hammer tried to attack the monster, but the monster spotted him and gave him a powerful crushing blow. The shocked people saw his lifeless body fall to the floor with a thud. Clutching his weapon with all his might, the leader shouted for him not to dare approach. He shouted to the men that they were outnumbered. If they all attacked together, they had a chance. At that moment, the dumbfounded people saw the ceiling above their heads collapse. Along with the huge stones, huge giants descended to the floor. Immediately, several monsters loomed over the group of defenseless people. Seeing this, the people were terrified. The leader realized that they had no chance of winning. The leader received a powerful blow and flew aside with a thud, falling to the ground. The frightened girl pressed herself against the column, hoping that the monsters would not notice them. A moment later, a deadly arrow flew over her head and crashed into the column. The grinning mutant furiously ordered the destruction of all the rats in this dump. Waving his arms, the monster released deadly streams of dark energy. Pressed to her son, the girl watched the events in horror. At that moment, a man with his hands up in the air came out from behind the column. He asked not to be destroyed, he surrendered. Following him came out and other people with their hands up and surrendered to the mutants to save their lives. Laughing, the mutant said he was just overexcited. He literally goes crazy when someone starts hiding. It makes him want to destroy. The girl also decided to come out and surrender, hoping to save her son. She took one last look at the boy, realizing that she would never see him again. Hoping that the monsters would not notice him, she hid Ray in a small niche in the wall. At that moment, the evil mutant shouted furiously for everyone to gather quickly. The terrified humans stood surrounded by huge giants and armed mutants. At this moment, their leader shouted loudly that Mr. Sakan was coming. All the mutants and giants immediately froze with a clenched fist in front of them. A man with his hands folded behind his back approached them leisurely. The man in a military uniform looked around, assessing what was happening. Kneeling before him, the mutant said that they had found more test subjects before returning to the safe zone. The leader said he was giving the humans one last chance. They would die here anyway. Taking out a multicolored pill, he told them that this drug could make them mutants. They should join them, and together they would build a new world on the ruins of the old one. The people were given the pills and they thought about what to do. One guy said that drinking it would be akin to self-destruction. Noticing this, the leader said that since they were not going to respond to his mercy, let them not regret the decision. The next moment, the mutants rushed to destroy the people who had not drunk the pill. Those who did not want to be destroyed immediately drank the pill they were given. With tears in her eyes, the girl clutched the pill, not daring to swallow it. The boy saw what was happening but could not even get up from his seat. Finally, she decided and swallowed the pill that the mutants gave her. After a moment, the bodies of the people who had taken the drug began to shake with the strongest chills. Suddenly, their bodies began to fall apart. Blood splattered in all directions. The frightened boy saw the blood and cautiously tried to look outside. Seeing what happened, Ray sobbed and stretched out his weak hands to his mother. All this time, the leader guarded by the giants was watching what was happening. In a few minutes, all the men were dead. Their lifeless bodies lay in a huge heap. The mutant informed Mr. Sakan that this time, no one was able to pass the mutation. A side effect was found in the form of blackening of the skin and the appearance of red lines on them. Frowning, the ringleader said that as expected, no one had been able to handle the mutation. It seemed to be too strong, and he had expected something more interesting. He said that if they wanted to take over the safe zone, they should hurry. The subordinate said to wait outside while he checked it out. Sakan-san's reputation shouldn't be tarnished because they missed someone. Meanwhile, the boy lay in his hiding place and moaned quietly, shaking with sobs. Suddenly, the mutant heard some noise from a niche near the floor and went to check it out. He had already bent down to look in there when he was distracted by a woman's voice. The girl shouted furiously for the dung beetle to stop poking around. Hearing this, the leader also stopped and turned around to look at the source of the noise. Raising her head, the girl said that they're all creatures no better than cockroaches. The enraged mutant cursed furiously and rushed to the girl lying on the floor. Looking at her, the ringleader asked how dare she compare him to a bug. He grabbed her by her pecs and jerked her high into the air. Holding her in front of him, the ringleader shouted that she was dying of side effects for daring to defy him. Speaking of insects, she's about to be swatted like a fly. It's ironic. She gave one last thought to her boy, hoping he'd stay alive. An exhausted Ray lay in his hiding place, sobbing quietly, thinking of his mom. The leader said they'd only wasted their time. They would leave now. As they left, the boy thought of his mom and reached out his hand to her breathless body. He crawled out of hiding and pressed himself against his mother, saying goodbye to her forever. Ray sobbed loudly and cried out for his mother. At that moment, the mutant heard the boy's voice and decided to return. The boy sobbed bitterly over the breathless body of his beloved mom. At that moment, he fiercely swore that he would surely destroy them all. Suddenly, Ray saw a pill lying on the ground which had fallen out of his mother's hands. The returning mutant spotted the boy and shouted that this is where the little rat was. Wasting no time in thinking, the boy swallowed the pill he had found. The mutant shouted furiously that he should answer when called by adults. Reaching out his huge hands with creepy claws, the mutant angrily said that he was an ill-mannered child. Swinging around, the mutant angrily promised to send the kid to his mom. After a moment, the shocked mutant saw the boy flying at him. He screamed in horror as he realized that the kid had taken his arm. The mutant turned. Ray glared furiously and swung around to strike. The enraged mutant shouted that even though the boy had taken a pill, he should know that he was called the strongest mutant. He extended his hands with huge, sharp claws towards his attacker. Their fists met. From the powerful confrontation, rock fragments flew in all directions. The shocked mutant screamed furiously. He hadn't expected this kid to be so strong. His face twisted with anger. He shouted that this could not be happening. Gritting his teeth furiously, he put his remaining arm out in front of him to destroy Ray. Grinning evilly, the mutant shouted that he had warned that he was the strongest. The little mutant furiously rushed forward to attack. He wanted to avenge his mother. But he didn't get to the bloodthirsty mutant in time to receive a crushing blow. Evil, chuckling mutant furiously shouted that now he will go to the other world. The wounded boy clenched his teeth in impotent rage. His face twisted with anger. The shocked mutant stared dumbfounded as the boy managed to free himself. He swung furiously and prepared to deliver another deadly blow. At that moment, the enraged boy with glaring eyes rapidly approached. The shocked mutant screamed in horror for him to stop. It was impossible. The little mutant delivered a powerful, deadly blow to his enemy, knocking him to the floor. All the while, Sakan watched the mutant confrontation closely. The mutant who called himself the strongest was crushed by the little boy. His wounded body lay on the floor, shattered from the impact in a pile of rubble. An enraged Ray leaned over him, his eyes glowed with hatred. Hovering over the mutant, the boy swung around to deliver a deadly blow. He struck again and again until he had finally destroyed his opponent. Suddenly, Ray felt something happening to his body. His arms shook. After a few minutes, Ray's whole body trembled. He had a strong chill. As he sank to the ground, the boy coughed violently. He was bleeding. Suddenly, the boy's hands began to turn black. Bright red stripes appeared on them. Seeing this, Sakan was disappointed to see that the boy had side effects after all. Kneeling down, the boy tried to gather all his strength to attack Sakan. Gritting his teeth in rage, Ray promised himself that he would destroy this villain. With his hands in front of him, he flew into the air and shouted furiously for the mutant to go to the other side. Seeing that the boy was trying to attack him, the mutant leader folded his fingers for a snap. With a light flick, he sent the boy flying. The boy flipped in the air and flew off to the side. The impact sent Ray crashing into the wall, kicking up a layer of dust and rock fragments. The mutant leader looked at the little mutant with indifference. Unconscious, the boy sat against the wall with a huge dent in it. Turning to leave, Sakan said that he too was a failed specimen. That's a shame. The leader ordered his mutants to move into the safe zone now. The unconscious boy continued to sit against the wall all alone. At that moment, someone suddenly descended into the sewers, seeing the signs of destruction. An unfamiliar girl fixing her glasses looked at the unconscious boy. Deciding that the boy needed help, she gently lifted him from the floor. Taking him in her arms, she decided to carry him out of here and help him survive. The girl said that as expected, this child turned out to be a mutant. 10 years passed. The girl and the boy were rapidly running through the ruined city. The little boy was desperately crying. He was already tired and couldn't run anymore. The girl pointed to the city and asked him to be patient. It was only a short walk away. The other refugees said there was a safe place guarded by militia soldiers. The boy complained that he was very tired and thirsty. He tripped and fell to the ground with a thud, losing what little strength he had. Helping him up, the girl told him to hold on a little longer. They must not stop or they would be caught. At that moment, a deadly arrow stabbed right in front of them. A moment later, a grinning, bloodthirsty mutant appeared in front of them. The mutant said that he was old enough to become a test subject. Pulling out a lamppost, he grinned and asked where he was running off to. And at that moment, he banged the iron with all his might in front of the frightened children. Clutching her little brother to her, the girl screamed desperately for someone to save them. Taking out a pill, the mutant handed it to the children and said that if they wanted it. He saw no point in delaying this moment. The mutant forced the boy's mouth open. The girl screamed in desperation, trying to stop the monster from shoving the pill in. Suddenly, the dazed monster heard someone else approaching. The guy with fiery hair gave a crushing blow to the mutant. Seeing the sudden appearance of the guy, the mutants were dumbfounded by his strength. Frightened, they recoiled and shouted furiously who he was. It was the grown-up Ray. Pinned the crushed mutant with debris, he said that he was the one hunting the mob. The enraged mutant asked if he was the militia mafia hunter. He's right. The guy replied that it was the end of his workday. If they behave, he'll spare them. The mutant replied that even if he was the head of the militia, he couldn't handle level 2 mutants alone. He violently launched a huge piece of metal pipe at the hunter. A moment later, the sharp edge of the pipe was in front of Ray's face. Dodging the crushing blows, the hunter flipped in the air. Suddenly, the guy grabbed the metal pipe released by the mutant. With a forceful swing, he sent the crushing weapon back in their direction. A moment later, a deadly projectile swiftly flew towards the dazed mutants. The pipe shard, fired with tremendous force, slammed into the mutant's body. The monster looked up and saw the hunter rapidly approaching. A moment later, Ray attacked the mutant and gave it a powerful crushing blow. The dazed monster did not have time to dodge and received a powerful blow to the face. At this moment, the second mutant armed with a club attacked the guy. But at that moment, the hunter gave him a crushing blow, knocking out the weapon. Having received a powerful blow, mutant lost his balance and flew off to the side. With all his strength and a powerful blow, Ray fiercely attacked the monster to finally knock it out. The frightened girl clung to her brother and watched the fierce confrontation with horror. A couple minutes later, 2 crushed mutants lay unconscious in front of her. She looked dumbfounded at the guy who destroyed the monsters, not knowing what to expect next. Ray sat down in front of her and said that if they were looking for the militia, they should follow him. The girl gladly agreed. It was their last chance for salvation. They reached the hollow land of Sector AE. It was a safe zone under the control of the People's Militia. The first thing the children were given was food and water. They greedily pounced on the bread and water. The hunter was sadly watching them through the window when the militia leader approached him. The hunter turned around and asked if it was the last request of the leader. Apologizing, the leader replied that he knew that Ray was dying, but he had no one else to do it. Let him be understood. There are no more mutants in the Gebla zone but him. Looking at the blackening skin, the guy said means they never found a way to save him. The head replied that he wasn't sure, but it seems he was able to find something. But the question remains if it will work. Surprised, Ray asked happily if they had found a way to help him. Sighing, the head said they still couldn't find a cure for the side effects, and his symptoms are very unusual. But he thinks the real reason is that there was no flame to complete the experiment. The boy asked in surprise how this relates to the search for that woman. The head replied that the one he was looking for knew how to handle the flame. Hearing his answer, Ray was dumbfounded. He realized that this was his chance for salvation. The head confirmed that it was the only way to save him and the militia's last chance to defeat the mob. He felt bad asking him to do this, but Ray absolutely had to track her down. The puzzled boy went to the militia's stables, wondering what he should do. As he harnessed the horse, Ray was puzzled and asked where he should start looking for her. At that moment, a girl came up to him and asked him if he was looking for the right girl. Right after the rescue, she was out of it and didn't have time to tell him. Yesterday, when they couldn't run anymore, they stopped in the ruins from exhaustion and cold passing out. Some girl helped them. She made a fire and stayed by their side protecting them. She remembers everything that happened rather vaguely because she was on edge. She thought it was a delusion before she died. She was just imagining things, not really. And when she woke up in the morning, the girl was gone and the wood was still smoldering. The girl said she could still smell that warm fire. The dazed guy listened to the girl's story attentively without interrupting. The girl added that the girl who had saved them was still somewhere nearby. Making his way through the ruins, Ray thought that the girl said that the smell of the fire came from here. He didn't have much time left. He would definitely have to hurry. He knew this was Hwachodon territory and he needed to be as careful as possible. The Hwachodon are a group of fanatics who treat fire as a god. Suddenly he heard someone shouting to catch him. A group of people armed with spears and skulls on their heads were running down the street. He hid in the nearest building to avoid a confrontation with the fanatics. Ray cursed furiously, thinking that he didn't have time to fight them. It would be better if he just slipped out of here quietly before they noticed him. But at that moment he accidentally stepped on the boards, which creaked loudly. Attracted by the noise, the fanatic ran into the building and noticed Ray hiding. Taking out a huge horn, the fanatic prepared to signal and call the others. Realizing that he was in trouble, Ray swore furiously as he thought about what to do next. Suddenly, the fanatic was attacked from behind by a stranger, delivering a crushing blow. The dumbfounded guy watched the scene with his mouth open in surprise. After disarming the fanatic, the girl lowered herself to the ground and took off her hood. Suddenly, Ray smelled the smell of a bonfire. He was dumbfounded by the suddenness. He wondered if it was her, the girl he was desperately looking for. Suddenly, the girl said that she noticed that he had been trying to find her all day. Looking into his eyes, she asked if he was looking for the girl with the flame of his soul. The shocked guy asked if she was the one he was looking for. The girl said no. Surprised, Ray asked where the smell came from. Sighing, the girl told him that it was just something that had been around her recently. He asked if she knew where the maiden was now. It was very important to him. The girl offered to follow her and then she would lead him to that fiery maiden. After a few minutes, they set off in search of the soul flame maiden. They reached the Hwachodon border area. Ray asked if they came here to avoid meeting Hwachodon. Are they moved into occupied territory? They're in an abandoned part of the border. Suddenly, the girl said there are only 3 people here. Will he be able to handle it? Angry, Ray asks why all of a sudden. Isn't she leading him to that girl? Why does he have to deal with these sickos? Suddenly, he heard an extraneous noise. He barely managed to dodge the deadly spear flying at him. The spear flew past him and stabbed into the wall next to the frowning girl. At that moment, a joyous fanatic shouted that the victims had walked into the trap themselves. They have the blessing of fire with them, and ordered them to be caught. The fanatics attacked Ray. He cried out in bewilderment as to why they were attacking him first. The enraged guy fiercely cursed, calling the Hwachodons lunatics. He flew at one of them with lightning speed and delivered a powerful punch to the jaw. With a crushing blow of his fist, Ray knocked out the second fanatic. At this moment, the third opponent rushed at the guy with the spear and received a strong kick with his foot. From the powerful blow, the fanatic lost his balance and flew far away to the side. All this time, the girl closely followed the crushing confrontation. After scattering the opponents, Ray said that he did not like all this. Something is not right here. Suddenly, a huge giant flew out of the fog that appeared out of nowhere. He swung around and gave the dazed Ray a crushing blow to the head. The guy who had no time to dodge was knocked down by the sudden blow and flew to the wall. Sitting on the floor, he wondered what kind of a huge mutant it was. At that moment, the giant lifted a huge crate, intending to drop it on Ray's head. Raising the box high into the air, the giant swung and threw it at the boy with force. The shocked boy saw the huge box coming towards him. He barely had time to jump back when the giant dropped the box on the spot where Ray was. He jumped aside and found himself on the pier surrounded by water on all sides. The enraged giant blocking his escape route was closing in on him. The overjoyed fanatic shouted that he had nowhere else to run. The moment he decided to go against Hwachodon, he signed his own death warrant. The giant came close to the boy and began to stomp desperately, trying to crush Ray. Seeing a ship rope on the dock, the boy decided that this was his chance and grabbed it. Deftly twisting the rope in his hands, he slipped out from under the giant's clutches. Jumping on the mutant's back, Ray clenched his fist furiously, ready to attack. The fanatic laughed. Did he really think that his fist could stop the huge mutant? But the power of Ray's punch was unbelievable. From the power of his onslaught, the giant lost his balance. Stumbling on the rope tied by the guy, the mutant desperately waved his arms. A moment later, he flew off the dock and into the water. Ray, who was sitting on his back, also began to fall, and the giant grabbed him. In the next instant, they collapsed into the water, leaving only a splash behind them. The satisfied fanatic laughed and said that this kid was too arrogant. Turning to the girl, he said that there wasn't much time. He would deal with her first. Lowering her eyes, the girl grinned but didn't answer him or move. The enraged fanatic shouted how the girl dared to laugh at him. The girl replied that she thought he didn't have to worry about her right now. The fanatic turned around and saw Ray standing behind him in wet clothes. The girl asked him if he didn't know that huge mutants can't swim. The fanatic thought that there was no need to panic. It is unlikely that the guy has any strength left because he just almost died. Screaming furiously for him to go to the other world, the fanatic rushed with a spear to attack. Suddenly, the girl gave him a deadly blow with the edge of her palm on his neck. The crushed fanatic collapsed face down on the ground with a thud and fell silent. The girl said it was ironic that he was the only one to go to the other side. Jumping aside so that the fanatic's body wouldn't fall on him, Ray asked where the girl was. He was going to fall back before he got to her. Looking down at him, the girl suddenly said that he had passed the test perfectly. She said that he should be able to get into the fire temple to save her friend, who was taken away by those guys. He shouted she was crazy. How many people does she think are in there? There's mutants in there too. She thinks he's out of his mind. Looking at the guy calmly, the girl asked him if he thought he had a choice. The person he has to save is the girl he's looking for. Realizing that he had no choice, Ray agreed, and they went to the fire temple. They used the sewer pipes under the bridge to sneak in unnoticed. He asked if she was sure this time. He would say again. He didn't have much time left. Once inside, they found themselves inside the subway tunnel. There were wrecked trains everywhere. Ray looked around and asked where the fanatics were hiding. She replied that the fire temple was built in an underground pit created by an earthquake. No one knows its exact location. However, as a refugee, she is good at navigating underground passageways. The guy asked if that wasn't strange. The Hwachodon are fanatics who worship fire. Why would they destroy her friend who was able to tame the flames? She said she didn't know for sure, but Yumi said that even if she had to die, she wouldn't reveal her identity. She thinks that even on the sacrificial altar until she dies, Yumi won't confess. They need to help her before it's too late. The boy asked why she would risk her life to save her. She replied that she was looking for a cure in the dead zone, just like him when she met her. She became a true friend, often helping at her own expense. When there was no food, Yumi shared the last piece of bread with her. He can imagine the absurdity of the situation. Who at a time like this would give up their belongings to another? He replied that there weren't many people willing to risk their lives for a piece of bread either. The girl said that when she was a little girl, the mob took away a man who was like family, and she hid in the rift. And no matter how much she begged for help, no one answered, even though the mob didn't take her. She had to climb the rocks for days with bloody fingers, and she made promises to herself. The first was that even if she died, she'd help the man who'd once saved her. And now she would do anything to fulfill her promise no matter what. The dumbfounded guy opened his mouth and listened to the girl's revelations. They reached the stairs when Ray asked what the second promise was. The girl replied not to even ask. In any case, she would only tell him before she died. A stunned Ray was surprised that she was willing to tell only before she died. She yelled for him to grab his hand. This ladder is so old it's about to collapse. At that moment, the ladder under Ray's feet cracked and began to fall apart. Breathing out, he said it was very close. He almost fell off. Reaching out to him, the girl told him to grab her hand. But he climbed out and said forget it. He can get out on his own. Being offended, the girl asked if it was so disgusting to take her hand. Embarrassed, Ray replied that it wasn't like that. She misunderstood him. It's because of the side effects of the mutation. If his heart starts beating faster, then he would lose his temper and immediately become a creepy monster. Anyway, in his current state, it could be very dangerous. She wondered if he had never held a girl's hand before. He replied that she knew now and should be more careful. She asked that if he turned into a monster, he would be stronger. She's right. Angry, he shouted, "What's the point of strength if he can die from it?" The girl reached out her hand to him and he recoiled in horror. The boy screamed, "What is she doing? Why is she trying to destroy him?" She replied that she thought it would be good to know the limit of his self-control. A dumbfounded Rhea shouted in amazement that she was just insensitive. Suddenly, the guy caught the rifle hanging on his shoulder on the walls. Shoving the rifle through, he noticed that the passage was getting narrower and narrower. It was uncomfortable. His companion asked him why he was lugging around a weapon that didn't work. Sighing, Ray admitted that it was inherited from his dead parents. He had no childhood memories at all. That's what the professor who saved him said. After he found out about it, he carries it around with him everywhere. At that moment, his companion interrupted him, telling him to be quiet. She said they had finally found the entrance. She didn't know where to go next. Scolding, Ray wondered how they would know exactly where her friend was. Lowering her eyes, the girl uncertainly replied that of course there was one way. He frowned and asked if she was thinking of distracting them with it and going to look for her. She replied that on the contrary, they should try not to attract attention and not to fight. He asked how she envisioned it. With a sigh, the girl replied, "Isn't it obvious? The place for the ritual should be permanent, and the more victims for the ritual, the better." Not understanding, Ray asked what method she was talking about. At that moment, the girl suddenly pushed him with force and he flew forward. In a moment, he was on the ground in front of the crowd of fanatics. Shocked, Ray looked dumbfounded at the companion who pushed him. She put her finger to her lips and told him not to give her away. After a while, the fanatics led the boy to the sacrificial hall and placed him on a steep cliff. The humans and mutants around them fell to their knees and chanted in the name of fire. At that moment, Ray noticed a girl in a white dress. He asked if she was Yumi. He had been sent to her by Sunka. The dumbfounded girl asked fearfully if Sunga was all right. Gritting his teeth in anger, Ray thought he had finally found her, but what should he do now? At that moment, the fanatic nudged him in the back with his spear, telling him to move. The boy stepped carefully along the rock ledge to the edge of the precipice. Rocks fell from under his feet. Soon he was standing on the edge of the abyss next to the girl. Ray looked down at the cliff and recoiled and swore furiously. He didn't know what to do. At that moment, one of the fanatics struck a gong, calling everyone to attention. The leader loudly announced that they were beginning the ritual of sacrifice. Looking at the huge dagger, Yumi said that if she died, the ritual would be completed. So the fanatics would probably spare the guy and not destroy him. Shocked, Ray furiously shouted for her to stop and rushed towards her. At that moment, the girl brought a huge dagger above her about to stab herself. He simply couldn't let that happen and swiftly reached out his bound hands towards her. But at that moment, Ray tripped unluckily on a stone on the ground. Losing his balance, the dazed guy realized that he was falling into the abyss. Fearfully looking in front of him and desperately screaming, Ray flew downwards. He closed his eyes and swore furiously, realizing that it was stupid to die like that. He thought he didn't know why he missed his mother so much. He didn't even remember her, but he didn't want to die. Suddenly, he heard a shout for him to hold on tighter, and the shadow of a rope. Ray opened his eyes and saw Shung-ha hanging on the rope in front of him. When he saw the girl reaching out her arms to him, he was dumbfounded. After a moment, she grabbed him tightly, preventing him from falling into the abyss. Grinning, Sunga said that she was always a little late. At that moment, they rushed off with Yumi standing on the edge with a dagger in her hand. The shocked girl rounded her eyes in surprise, couldn't understand what was going on. At that moment, Rei and Seunga approached her and the girl reached out her hand towards Yumi. Grasping her tightly, Seunga pulled Yumi against her on one side and Rei on the other. After a moment, they flew to the side without giving the fanatics a second thought. The boy said she should have warned him right away that she was going to use him as bait to figure out the location of the ritual. Continuing to hang on the rope, they flew over the heads of the infuriated fanatics. Rei asked, "And now what?" Landing them on the opposite side of the fanatics, Seungha said let him get his gun first. She shouted loudly that now it was time to run. The fanatics, armed with spears, rushed in pursuit. The leader shouted furiously to be caught immediately without letting them escape. A moment later, deadly spears flew toward the fleeing fanatics. They had to dodge to avoid the crushing fire. The deadly spears fell and jabbed into the ground next to the fleeing men, threatening to destroy them. The boy shouted that there was a way out. They must make it before they were killed. The terrified Seunga barely dodged a deadly spear flying close to her head. The attack intensified. The enraged fanatics were literally on their heels. One of the spears struck the girl, knocking her to the ground and pinning her hair to the ground. She screamed that she couldn't move. The spear clutched her hair. The girl looked fearfully at the rapidly approaching fanatics. At that moment, she saw a deadly spear fly by her face. She saw Rei beside her, holding the crushing bark tightly. He shouted for her to run as soon as he released and struck the spear into her hair. After a moment, the guy released Seunga and she rushed to run towards the exit. He ran after them, shouting loudly for the girls not to turn around and run faster. They had almost reached the exit, but the deadly spears of the catching up fanatics kept raining down on them. Dodging the spears, they quickly ran through the door. Running up to the door, Rei slammed it shut with force and pinned it down with his body. The fanatics started pounding furiously on the door, trying to open it. Throwing the crossbow to Yumi, the guy shouted for her to take it and leave first. The dazed girl caught the crossbow, not knowing what to do now. Seunga yelled that this passage would lead her to the sea. There is a boat there. Shocked, Rei shouted what Seungha was doing. Why isn't she leaving too? Suddenly, the guy looked dumbfounded at Yumi standing in front of him. Pointing her crossbow at him, she was glaring at him furiously. He shockedly asked who she was. Smirking, she asked if the guy was interested in who she was. Pointing her crossbow at him, the girl laughed and said she was the one who hunts refugees. Grinning evilly, she said he shouldn't be so surprised. In order to find refugees, hunters often hide their identities. A shocked Rei shouted that she was even talking, so she wasn't the girl he was looking for. Laughing, the huntress asked if he was referring to that silly rumor she had started. She'd made it up so that stupid people like him would fall for her. If she couldn't find the victim by the end of the day, she might become a victim herself. That bitch Seungha is so meticulous. It was really hard to lure her here. She gave her a chance to leave. Who knew she'd come back on her own and bring him with her? At first, she was going to make it quick and easy, but they were lucky enough to come alone. If she sacrificed them, she'd be a first-class hunter. Shocked, Rei shrieked in fear that they were finished. Laughing, the huntress said she would start with the dorky one. Stunned, Rei shouted angrily, "No, he can't die like this." Tightening the bowstring, the huntress said with a chuckle, "Well, let him say goodbye to his life." The shocked boy looked at the huntress dumbfounded and cursed furiously. Huge birds were flying over the Temple of Fire, waiting for their prey. The fanatics had brought a huge battering ram and were trying to smash the door to get in. Suddenly, they stopped and froze when they heard a suspicious sound. Closing his eyes in horror, Rei screamed desperately, realizing that he was about to be killed. But at that moment, the deafening sound of a gunshot suddenly rang out. The stunned huntress stared dumbfounded at the deadly wound on her body. She cried out in helpless despair as to how this could have happened. Firing the firearm, Seunga said this was her second promise. To use deadly weapons only to save her comrades. The slain huntress fell to the ground astonished. Rei screamed, "Yes, how did she do that?" He tried to say something else to Seungi, but at that moment he felt he couldn't hold the door anymore. At that moment, the door behind Rei literally shattered into small pieces. With a powerful jolt, the guy flew far to the side and fell to the ground. He collapsed with a thud right under Seunghi's feet. The fanatics were no longer deterred. With a huge battering ram, they smashed the door and rushed inside. A shocked Rei, looking for a way out, shouted to his companion to run to the other side. Suddenly, huge giants advanced on them from the opposite side. Armed with hammers, the mutants approached the frightened fugitives. A shocked Rei dumbfoundedly asked where these giants came from. The order came to capture them, and the fanatics, along with the giants, surrounded them on both sides. The escape routes were cut off. Armed mutants waving their spears rushed to the attack. A huge crowd of angry people were rapidly approaching. They had nowhere to run. Deciding that this was their last chance to escape, Seunga suddenly approached and pulled Rei to her. She said he should forgive her, but this was their last chance to escape. The dumbfounded Rei rounded his eyes in surprise. He couldn't understand what she was up to. The girl kissed him fervently on the lips. Enemies were attacking them from all sides. Sauna kissed Rei, expecting him to be transformed. The unexpected hot kiss made the boy's heart beat frantically, ready to jump out of his chest. At that moment, a stream of deadly spears rained down on the standing fugitives. The girl let go of Rei, whose body began to change rapidly. A thick fog descended to the ground, and flashes of energy could be seen through it. Peering into the fog, the fanatics tried to see if they could catch him. One of the fanatics said that the fog was thickening and nothing could be seen. Suddenly seeing some movement in the fog, the fanatic shouted there. Rei's jacket was covered with deadly spears fired by the fanatics. Luckily, the guy managed to slip out of it alive and unharmed. The dazed fanatics were frantically trying to figure out where they had gone. One of them shouted that he saw something in the distance. A huge dark blur was rapidly approaching them. Suddenly, the dazed giant came flying at the fanatics with a loud scream. They rushed in different directions to avoid being hit by the rapidly falling body. The giant collapsed to the ground with a thunderous crash, crushing several people who had not had time to escape. The shocked fanatics screamed what's in there. What in the world had happened? The thick fog began to dissipate, revealing what was happening. Through the dissipating fog, the fanatics saw a transformed guy embraced by flashes of energy. The guy said no matter what happened, she should trust him and keep running that way. He asked if she could handle it. Turning around, the excited Sunga saw a crowd of armed giants on the path. They were furiously glaring with their eyes standing in the passageway, inexorably approaching them. Sighing, Sunga lowered her eyes and quietly said that she would surely make it through. The girl gathered her hair into a ponytail so it wouldn't interfere with her escape. Looking into his eyes, Sunga confidently said that she was willing to give it a try. The fanatics shouted that they had nowhere to run to and ordered to capture them immediately. They stood on a narrow path surrounded on both sides by angry fanatics and mutants. With deadly spears in front of them, they rushed forward to capture the fugitives. On the other side, they were attacked by giants armed with huge hammers. Crouching on his knee and preparing to attack, Ray told Seung-hee that she should run as fast as she could. The girl sprang from her seat and sped toward the nearest exit. At that moment, the transformed Ray flew into the air to attack the fanatics. With a bird of prey, he swooped down on the crowd of dumbfounded fanatics. They were in shock. With deadly blows in all directions, the guy smashed the shocked enemies. With a powerful blow, the guy destroyed the bridge they were standing on. The enemies who could not escape fell down in clusters. Ray jumped up on the remaining edge. The girl ran with the thought that whatever happened, she wouldn't see. She just had to keep running. Sunga threw herself under the giant's feet. A huge hammer was rapidly approaching her head, threatening to crush her. But in time, Ray pushed it away with a powerful blow, saving Seung-ha. The enraged giants reached out to grab the fleeing men. One of them had almost reached the girl and tried to catch her. Flying up into the air, Ray delivered a crushing blow, knocking him down. He fell to the ground with a thud, and Seung-ha barely dodged it and continued to run away. The boy picked up the huge hammer that the slain giant had dropped. He threw it with great force through the crowd of giants, clearing a path for Seung-hee. At that moment, the order to slam the iron door suddenly sounded. The fanatics rushed to carry out the order, the three of them piling on the heavy door. After exerting their efforts, they slammed the door with a resounding thud and pressed it down with all their might. The fanatics exhaled contentedly that they had succeeded in trapping the fugitives. Suddenly, one of the fanatics looked down and cursed furiously. He noticed the giant's hammer that prevented the door from slamming shut, completely leaving a gap. At that moment, the iron door flew out with a rumble, covering the people standing around it. On top of the rapidly flying door were Ray and a terrified Seung-hee. The fanatics were knocked down by the impact and the fugitives flew at the door. The falling door hit the rock, stopping the rapid fall. They clung tightly to the falling metal door to keep from falling off. Clinging tightly, Seung-ha shouted that there was a boat tied up at the bottom of the hill. They must get to it by all means. Then they would be able to escape. At last their fall ended and they stopped on the shore, sighing heavily. Right in front of them, the boat was bobbing on the waves. Jumping into the boat, the girl said they could breathe out now. They got out. Pushing the boat away from the shore, Ray asked what she was talking about. The temple servants are still on their tail. She replied that the Hwancheon members would not chase them through the water. A surprised Ray asked why. With a smirk, Suna replied that the sea is a cursed place for fanatics. They believe that the burnout that occurred had its origin in the water, but still they must be on their guard. Who knows what they have in mind. At that moment, Ray coughed violently. Droplets of blood flew in all directions. The worried girl anxiously asked if he was all right. Sighing, Ray replied that it was the effects of the side effects. He needed to get some rest at least. She asked him to bear with it a little longer. He can't pass out. She won't be able to do it alone. Breathing heavily, Ray asked if she could help him get to the militia headquarters. Suddenly, the girl noticed a foreign sound and looked up. Pointing upwards, Seung-ha said fearfully that something was approaching them. She excitedly shouted to Ray to watch out. He should dodge. At that moment, the shocked girl saw the downed Ray falling into the water. She was dumbfounded to see that a black stream was rushing down on the guy. She cried out in despair as Ray disappeared into the water column, leaving only a splash behind him. It was a deadly arrow fired from a huge crossbow by the fanatics. The downed and wounded guy was rapidly sinking into the deep sea. After a while, Seung-ha saw a small island and swam towards it. Having moored to the shore close to evening, the girl went inland to the island. Leaving the boat on the shore, she and the rescued Ray decided to rest. Having made a fire, Seung-ha sat on the edge of a rock. Nearby lay Ray in an unconscious state. She placed him closer to the fire and looked up at the night sky, wondering what to do next. She was so immersed in her thoughts that she didn't notice the people approaching her. The shocked head said it was indeed fire. It had been a long time since he had felt its warmth. He apologized to Seung-hee for scaring her. He just couldn't help himself when he saw the fire. He told her he was a militia commander in charge of Ray. He's here to take her to safety. It's not safe to stay here. They had better go to the militia headquarters. The girl looked at the head thoughtfully, deciding what she should do now. Suddenly, she put a huge dagger in front of her and said, "Stop talking nonsense." The shocked head looked dumbfounded at the girl with the dagger in her hand. She said they want to use her to create weapons and take over the world. She already knows enough about them to believe everything they say. The head calmly replied that since she already knew everything then. At that moment, he bent over a club with sharp tips lying on the ground. Grinning evilly, he shouted that then we can drop all formalities. She's right. Catching her would get them out of the bloody perdition zone. And also wipe out everyone who treated him with disdain. He'd own the safe zone. At that moment, a sneaking accomplice put a huge knife to the girl's throat. The head continued that the militia at the safe zone had already declared themselves the government. The bastards. They had just abandoned him in the Gibla zone, tasked with finding new test subjects. The dumbfounded girl asked if it meant that people like Ray were saving people and he was sending them to be experimented on. The head replied with a smirk that he didn't think it was unfair to him. He gave him a mutant a reason to live. Looking at him, the girl cursed furiously. "Just real bastards," she said. The head laughed. It didn't look like she wanted to join them. So he has no choice but to use force. He swung furiously. With one hand, a knife was pointed at the girl, and on the other, a club was flying at her. The suddenly awake Ray jumped up and grabbed the crushing weapon without letting it strike. The shocked head, dumbfounded, shouted how such a thing was even possible. The enraged guy shouted furiously, how could he? After all, he had believed him. Hiding the knife behind his back, the head tried to calm Ray down, telling him to come to his senses. It was all the blonde's fault. He misunderstood. She's just trying to break them up. He raised him for 10 years. Does he think there's anything more important than him? At that moment, Ray snatched the crushing baton from his hands. The head recoiled in fright. The enraged guy shouted furiously for the militia leader to shut up immediately. After a moment, swinging with all his might, he gave him a powerful blow with the baton. At the same time, he jerked the huge knife sharply and the henchman lost his balance. The huge club flew towards the dazed assistant, who screamed in horror. He flew off to the side and flew off the cliff into the sea. Breathing heavily, Ray sank to his knees. Sunga looked after the flying villain. The frustrated boy, standing on his feet in despair, asked why it had turned out this way. He swore furiously, not knowing what to do and how to live. After the events, they sat on the shore deciding what to do next. Under Ray's feet was a broken shotgun that he had gotten from his parents. The girl said that his parents had saved them. Thanks to that gun, they are alive. The boy replied that he carried it everywhere. After all, it was the only thing left of them. As Ray slung the gun on his shoulder, he realized something was wrong. Before the huge arrow hit him, he had already lost consciousness and should have died from the side effects. But his body, on the contrary, became light and the side effects disappeared. He couldn't understand why. He was about to leave when Sunga called out to him and asked him where he was going. Ray replied that there was no reason for them to stay together anymore. But the girl suddenly said that there was actually a reason, and it's him. She asked if he wanted to be her personal bodyguard. He asked why. If she runs into difficulties, let her find her own help. He had no more reason to help her. Frowning, Sunga asked he thought it was that simple. Ray said that right now he is free and free to do whatever he wants. At that moment, a sharp, intense pain shot through the guy's entire body. All the side effects came back. The dazed guy fell to the ground and rolled up his sleeve to see that his skin was starting to turn black again. Looking at him, Sunga calmly said that he wouldn't be able to handle it alone. He will die like this because of burnout syndrome. A shocked Ray asked what she meant. She told him that although it's rare, it's a disease that sometimes occurs among mutants, which progresses due to a reaction with the burnout substance in the air. However, she emits a scent that can repel these particles. They just disappear around her. She is the one who can utilize the inner flame. He shouted desperately. Sunga asked him if he felt better when she came closer. The guy was furious. He screamed furiously, how is this even possible? Sighing, Sunga replied that it was her mom who made her the way she is. She feels that the incident that turned the planet into this has something to do with her mom. So in order to fix it, she has to find her mom. He said okay, let's say. She's gonna take him with her, but at least she knows where to go. The girl confidently replied that they would have to go to the safe zone. He shouted Sunga must be crazy. They've already made enemies in the form of the militia and Huang Chudan. Now she's suggesting they go to the safe zone. Does she really think he's lost his mind? The girl looked at him thoughtfully, listening to everything he said. The guy was getting more and more agitated. He shouted furiously that going there alone would be self-destruction. Grinning, Sunga asked what he was saying. She couldn't hear it. Rolling on the ground, Ray was beating hysterically. He couldn't agree, but he couldn't not go either. The girl pretended she didn't hear anything and kept asking him what he was saying. Finally, when Ray calmed down, Suna calmly told him that they were going to the safe zone. At this time, the people from the safe zone showed up to the people's militia in the Gibla zone. They wiped out several people of the militia. The survivors screamed they were from the safe zone. Why are they here? They replied that there were rumors of a militia here. There was a girl who could control the flames. Where is she now? Once when Sungha was very young, she was chased by a mob of boys. She desperately ran away, but the boys sat on her tail with giggles and hooting. The fleeing boys shouted that she was the daughter of a monster. She must be caught. Armed with clubs, they shouted that they would catch her and protect their village. Soon, the girl ran to an entrance hidden in the rock. She hoped to take refuge there. She had already opened the door to enter when rocks came hurtling towards her. One of the large stones reached its target and the girl screamed in pain. The overjoyed boys shouted happily that he had hit the monster. She slammed the door shut and huddled against it, hoping they couldn't get in. When she heard laughter coming from behind the door, she crouched down to listen. Suddenly, a baton slipped through the crack of the door. Sunga recoiled in horror. She was sitting on the ground fearfully clenched in a ball when they heard the sounds of fighting from the street. The girl stood up and carefully walked to the door to see what was going on. She was dumbfounded when she saw a boy standing near her hiding place with a club in his hands. The girl wondered if he had come to protect her. The rather decently beaten boy turned around and smiled back at her. A moment later, he collapsed with a thud right on the ground, exhausted from the fight. Thoughts swam through Sunghee's mind, wondering how he was now. Here she is alone, for example. At that moment, the girl jumped up, realizing it was a dream. Frightened, she grabbed the knife, she started waving it around and screamed as she fell asleep. At that moment, she saw Ray standing in the doorway and calmed down a bit. He was standing by the open door and looking into the distance. Sunga lowered the knife. She was slowly coming to her senses, trying to figure out how she could have fallen asleep like that. Hearing a noise, Ray turned around and wondered if she was awake. When was the last time she had even slept? She said that after her mom disappeared and the world changed, she was constantly scared and didn't trust anyone and didn't sleep for more than 2 hours. Surprised, Ray asked what 2 hours. She joked. Sunga slept for a day and a half like she was undead. The girl was dumbfounded when she found out that she slept for so long. He told her that she fell asleep as soon as they got to his place, and she snores a lot. Getting up, Sungha said that she had rested well. Her body felt so light for the first time. He said they should go to the militia shelter anyway. Seung-ha wondered why. She was sure they had already prepared for that. Sighing, Ray told her that he had recently helped the kids get to the militia. After what he had learned, he wanted to save at least them. After all, he thought it would be for the best. She asked in surprise if he wanted to go in there alone. His body still hadn't recovered. Lowering his head and clenching his fists, Ray said that he had no one to ask for help anyway. Looking at his doubts, Seung-ha said she had a place in mind. The boy looked at her hopefully and asked what she meant. She said that she knew of a refugee shelter and offered to go there. At the same time, the men from the safe zone arrived at the fire temple in search of Seung-hee. They destroyed several fanatics who tried to get in their way. The mutant grinned and told them to be quiet. He had only come to find out about the girl he was looking for. The head of the fanatics shouted angrily that those two should be sacrificed to the fire god. He dare not touch them. He will be punished for trespassing on their victims. The armed giants waving their hammers rushed towards the mutants from the safe zone. At that moment, a mutant crouched down, swinging a huge axe ready to jump. A moment later, he soared over the heads of the dazed giants. With a chuckle, releasing his ugly hands with huge claws and waving the axe, he rushed back. A moment later, he swiftly approached the shocked giants. Coming down on their heads, the mutant began to deliver deadly blows, destroying the giants one by one. The head of the fanatics screamed, how dare he go against them? The biggest organization in this world. Not even the mafia would allow themselves to do such a thing. But the mutant only grinned back and furiously shouted reaping. A moment later, he was moving swiftly, destroying everyone in his path. Cries of pain and horror rang out over the fire temple. Blood splattered in all directions. Afterward, the mutants from the safe zone went to the site of the sacrifice and found Ray's jacket. The mutant took the jacket in his hands and smelled the odor of the fire. He was glad that he had finally found the one he had been looking for. At this time, Ray and Seung-ha left the shelter and set off. Dragging a huge backpack behind him, Ray asked her to at least tell him where they were going. This sanctuary really exists. She smiled and said that if he didn't believe her, she could go alone. But the guy fearfully shouted for her to stop. He believes her, of course he does. Continuing to smile, Seung-ha said fine. Then they will continue walking. Frowning, Ray said angrily that this girl is just the devil in the flesh. Continuing to pull the cart, he said he still couldn't understand something. If she could use a weapon, she would have no problem taking over the safe zone. So why is she still here? The girl wondered if he had never been outside the Gibla zone. Even mutants outside the Gib zone can't use weapons. For her to use a weapon, it would have to be in direct contact with her skin. And if she was the only one who could use it, then an army was out of the question. After a moment's thought, Ray said then if she became the head of the Hwangchudan. She interrupted by asking if he thought she could be their leader. He thinks that those who rule them would give her the opportunity to achieve a high position. They've worked so hard to unite. Why should they consider her? Ray says there's no other way. Then let him just stay by her side. It's not a golden mountain, but he can guarantee Seung-hee's safety. She smiled and replied that she understood. He only needs her as an antidote. Unfortunately, he can't protect her. Getting angry, Ray shouted that why can't he protect her? The girl sadly replied it's because he will die much sooner than her. Frowning, Ray asked what she was talking about. She had told him then, hadn't she? She answered correctly. The scent that comes from her suppresses its side effects, but does not completely get rid of them. The shocked guy looked at him dumbfounded and asked what she was saying. With a sigh, Seung-ha replied that her power was only enough to light a fire. Besides, the farther away she is from him, the weaker he is. If he moves 10 meters away from her, he will die. Something like that. All she can do is push back the time of his death, but he'll still die. Shocked, Ray shouted that he would die following her like a tail. The girl answered that that's why she is trying to destroy this world and create a new one where everyone will have a flame. She is absolutely sure that her mom knows what to do for that. Finally, they reached a remote place. Standing on the edge of a cliff, Seung-ha said they had arrived. The shelter where the surviving refugees are hiding is in this place. The dumbfounded boy stared in surprise at what appeared before him. Hidden among the snowdrifts among the rocks in front of them was a deep cave entrance. They cautiously stepped inside and walked into the depths of the cave. Ray was still dragging his huge backpack behind him. Slowly advancing among the frozen rocks, they walked further and further. Looking around, Ray asked if she was sure the refugees were hiding here. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to the sounds and he looked around carefully. At that time, hiding in the crevices between the rocks, armed men were watching them. A worried Ray asked her if she was sure it was safe. She calmly told him that new refugees were always being watched. Many of the shelters had been destroyed because of spies or manhunters. Stopping, Seung-ha said that they needed to find the man in charge first. The boy replied that they should quickly gather those willing to help and go to the militia. Sighing, Seung-ha replied not to worry. They've been watching the militia for a while now. Frowning, Ray doubtfully wondered if they would be willing to help them. Smiling, Seung-ha said that's why she made him carry those supplies. He understood now. He just needed to trust her and everything would be fine. But the refugees grabbed Ray and tied him with ropes to a wooden cross. He cried out desperately that she promised everything would be all right. At that moment, someone threw a stone towards Ray, hitting him right in the head. The shocked Seung-ha looked dumbfounded at the guy whose head was bleeding. He was on his knees tied to the cross and drops of blood were dripping down his face. At that moment, a crowd of armed men came out to destroy him. They shouted furiously that he must be destroyed right now. Covering Ray with herself, the girl shouted in desperation for them to stop and listen. The man screamed how Seung-ha could do such a thing. How could she protect someone like him? The girl screamed that she is not protecting. He is a mutant and they can use him. The enraged man asked use. Those militia creatures destroyed his son. The shocked girl put her hands in front of her and tried to stop the angry people. The armed men shouted that even for her sake, they could not accept this monster. The old man burst into tears and said that many people here had lost their children to the militia. A shocked Ray said that he thought they were going to a safe place. The furious old man screamed, is that really all he wants to say now? Tears ran down Ray's cheeks. He said for them to forgive him. He didn't know all this time what horrible things the militia had done. He kept asking for forgiveness, but the angry old man yelled at him to stop talking nonsense and just go to the other side. Covering Ray with herself, Sunga desperately shouted for them not to do that. The huge hammer was rapidly approaching the suddenly appearing girl. Raising his eyes, Ray was amazed that she was standing in front of him despite the threat. Spreading her arms out to the sides, the girl covered him with her body, preventing him from striking. Shocked, Ray asked how she was here. Covering the guy with her body, the girl shouted that he wasn't a bad person at all. As she was locked up in the prison, she heard conversations outside. He really didn't know anything. But the old man wouldn't back down. He shouted that even if he did. But he was interrupted by a man who patted him on the shoulder and said that he had done a good job. Turning around, the old man was surprised to realize that their elder had arrived. Frowning, the elder said that he, as the representative of the village, was making a statement. They cannot afford to reject any help, even the smallest. These people have brought the supplies they need. Here's medicine and food. After calming the raging men, the elder invited them into his house. The boy asked in surprise how she had escaped and gotten here again. The elder said that the search team that had gone out to search the city had come across the destroyed militia. There were people nearby. Frowning, Ray asked who had destroyed those militia. He replied that he didn't know who, but he could tell that it was the first time he had seen such a brutal massacre. At that moment, the girl sitting next to him sighed and said what she had heard. It was the hunters who had come from the safe zone. They were ruthlessly destroying without sparing anyone. Hearing this, the shocked Ray and Sung-hee rounded their eyes in a daze. The elder asked why they had come here. Shouldn't they be in the safe zone next to the government? At that moment, Ray guessed that they seemed to be looking for Sung-ha. Frowning, the elder looked at them, not understanding why they needed her. The girl said that they should get to the safe zone faster. Ray replied that there was nothing to procrastinate then. They could leave right now. Sighing, Sung-ha replied that they need to find something first. The elder asked the girl if they needed a map. A dumbfounded Seung-ha asked in surprise how he could have guessed that. With doubt in his voice, Ray asked why they needed a map. Aren't all the roads destroyed? The elder replied that there was one left. The people from the safe zone use it. Upon hearing this news, Ray was astonished. He shouted that it was impossible. Seung-ha said she had heard about it too. Someone even had a cart. The elder said that you can get anything from them except food and medicine. They call them storekeepers. The excited girl asked if they could meet them now. He replied that he didn't know. They usually find a safe hidden place and set up a small warehouse there, without interacting with anyone, but there's one way to meet them. After thinking it over, they decided that Ray and Sung-ha should meet the storekeeper first. Soon they reached a place that was used by the storekeeper as a warehouse. Enraged, he yelled for them to get out now. Had they come to steal his things? But Ray replied that he had a favorable offer for him. The storekeeper asked why he should believe him. After all, he's a militiaman. As he ran away, he shouted that they should never come here. Ray scratched the back of his head and said it wasn't working. At that moment, Sung-ha asked because the elder said there was a way. He said that the storekeeper had a wife who stopped laughing and talking after their son died. When the power in the safe zone was not yet stable, the storekeeper's son joined the people's militia to stop the mafia. But he was used as an experiment. Ri couldn't cope with the mutation and ended up dying painfully. When the mob invasion began, he had to flee to save himself and his wife. They couldn't even bury him. Before leaving the safe zone, the storekeeper owned a warehouse. So fleeing from the safe zone, he took a cart with everything he needed to survive. In order to save his wife, who had lost the will to live, he moved to the safe zone. In order not to forget where his son's body is, he made a map with notes. It's a one-of-a-kind map of the journey to the safe zone. When he went back there with his wife, she spent the whole time at the burial site that didn't even have his son's body in it. It's been years, but she still doesn't speak or express any emotion. No matter how hard the storekeeper tried to make his wife laugh, nothing worked. If they can make the storekeeper's wife laugh, he'll do anything for them. He would even volunteer to give them his map he once made. Doubting, Ray wondered if even his husband couldn't do it for so many years, how they could. Deciding that nothing was impossible, Sung-ha asked the elder to tell him about her. After thinking for a moment, he replied that they had never spoken to her before. Sighing, Sung-ha lowered her head. She thought it was unlikely that they would have any luck. At that moment, the elder remembered that there was a man who had met her before, and he told them to go to a remote cave that everyone was avoiding. That day, the man was running fast, carrying his young son in his arms. The boy looked at his father and said he was very, very scared. He told the boy not to inhale, to cover his nose and mouth, and to run as fast as he could. They ran swiftly past the cave where they had just been. There was a strong, peculiar odor coming out of it. In the cave was a man who was wrapped upside down in bandages. All people avoided the cave for fear of catching the same disease. Only the storekeeper's wife fearlessly went into the cave to see the man. Covering their faces to avoid breathing in the stench, people murmured that there was a limit to dementia. Because of this crazy woman, they can't get rid of the infection. The man said they had no choice. Thanks to her, they can get everything they need from the storekeeper. Hearing this talk, the storekeeper shouted angrily who dares to call her weak-minded. If they call her weak-minded again or say anything in her direction, they will get nothing more. They quickly gibbered that no one was saying anything. They were just leaving. As they left, they argued on the way that it was no longer possible to live a normal life here. Wondering, Ray asked what kind of disease it is that people are afraid of. The girl replied that it was a very scary disease. He asked her to finally tell him. Seung-ha said that people without flames like him get it. He asked if the disease he has is an infectious disease. With a smile, Sung-ha replied that it is rather a horrible and painful disease that burns the internal organs, but it is not transmissible. This disease is extremely rare. It causes the skin to blacken and a foul odor to emanate from the body. Many people think it's an infection, but they lost a son to the disease, so they know it's not an infection. Ray said, thinking about it, that the man she talks to all the time has the same disease as her son. She replied that the smell of the disease was so strong that even her presence would not slow it down. The boy said the odor was very strong. At that moment, a man in bandages put his hand on his shoulder. Seeing this man beside him, Ray was frightened and fell to the floor screaming in terror. He looked at him dumbfounded, not knowing what to do. Shunga was standing nearby. Suddenly, the man in bandages inquired, "They must want to make that woman laugh." Looking straight into his eyes, Shunga asked him if he could help them do that. He replied that they have to find someone first. It's very important. Before their son joined the militia, he was a chef at a famous restaurant. The greatest pleasure of the aunt, who was not a good cook, was to taste the dishes prepared by her son. A dumbfounded Ray asked if they had to cook or something. He said yes, but there is a problem even bigger than the lack of a flame. Guessing, Ray asked if he must be talking about fire. The man replied that fire is fire, but there is almost no one left in the world who remembers what restaurant food tastes like. The excited girl asked if there was almost no one left. He confirmed, but said that however now the cook is just in the Gibla zone. Even when the fire was gone, Pepe the chef had learned to convey the flavor of food cooked on fire. After a while, Ray and Seungha went to the center of the city to the Gibble zone. There were 3 people sitting on the edge of a ruined building talking. One of them said that since the fire was gone, the food had become some kind of garbage. The other confirmed that he was right. If he could just have one more taste of Pepe's cooking, maybe they should kidnap him. The first one screamed he must be crazy or he wants to kill them. Didn't he hear the fight over him in the safe room? Pepe said himself that he'd rather die than serve anyone, so they had no choice but to give him his freedom. If someone were to capture Pepe, all the mutants in the safe zone would show up. The only way he could taste the food he cooked, only if he wants to cook it when he sees you. The third guy said they're the only ones who know where he is right now. The second guy replied that it was completely useless information. At that moment, a rope appeared above his head. A moment later, the guy was swiftly lifted into the air. The guys continued to reason that they were the best informants here. They could join the same organization as Pepe. Maybe they'd get something. They didn't even notice the sudden disappearance of one of their comrades. Pensive, the first one asked if he felt like something was missing. The second replied that the mood had turned sour. At that moment, Suna Ray and the guy in bandages stood in front of the kidnapped guy. He asked in horror who they were. Looking at the guy, Ray said that they say they are the best informers in the neighborhood, so they know where to find Pepe. Laughing, he asked why. Did they think the 3 of them could capture him? With a predatory grin, he asked if they were fools to do such a thing. Hiding a huge dagger behind his back, he added that he was explaining for meat. He became the best informer precisely because he is very strong and swung the dagger. But at that moment, Ray delivered a crushing blow next to him, punching through the wall. The dumbfounded informant was horrified and screamed. Seeing the gaping hole in the wall, he frightenedly mumbled that Pepe was in the GK. He could even show them the way if they wanted him to. After a while, the 3 headed to the GK neighborhood in search of the cook. Ray asked if they could trust him. Seungha replied that they have no choice. They don't know what exactly Auntie likes and what cook Pepe looks like too. So they have no other option but to trust and follow him. After a while, they reached a huge tunnel leading to another neighborhood. The man in bandages said that at the end of this tunnel would be the GK Citadel. The baffled man looked around and realized that he was standing all alone. His companions were not around. Ray cursed and said that he had been in such a hurry that he had forgotten to take him too. A surprised Seungha asked why he had brought her here. He replied to keep her quiet. They are already watching them. At that moment, the shocked man in bandages saw a huge knife in front of his face. He was surrounded by strangers with cylinders on their backs. They blocked his way. Seeing them, Ray swore that they were chemists from the militia. Seungha asked who they were. He said they were from the top militia unit, special troops with poison gas. First, they have to wait for the moment and save him. Seungha should get ready to run. Suddenly, they saw that the chemists weren't going to destroy him. They stood at attention. The shocked girl wondered why they were saluting him. Looking out the window, Ray furiously cursed that they were caught. At that moment, a shadow fell on the window. Armed chemists suddenly appeared in front of them, and Ray guessed that this guy was a militia spy. The shocked Seungha was horrified to see a deadly spear in front of her. Saving her, Ray grabbed the tip of the spear and his hands immediately turned red. He felt a strong burning sensation. A liquid was vaporizing on the tip of the spear. Guessing it was poison, Ray shouted for her to stop the spear from hitting her. She must be extremely careful. There is a dangerous poison on these spears. Hearing his words, the frightened girl screamed, and what will happen to him? At that moment, another chemist attacked him, trying to reach him with a spear from above. To save Ray, Seungha rushed at the attacker and knocked him down. Suddenly, the girl realized that the deadly poison spear had left a cut on her arm. At that moment, an enraged Ray rushed at him and broke the spear with a powerful blow. Enraged, he delivered crushing blows to the chemists, scattering them in different directions. With a powerful leg kick, the guy broke the poison spears and crushed the opponents. Ray's powerful kick sent one of them flying aside and smashing into the wall. Taking out a capsule, he shouted furiously that they would see if he could defeat the poison gas. After a moment, the chemist threw the poison gas capsule onto the floor. At the same instant, a powerful explosion sounded and the poisonous gas was released. The poisonous gas streams filled the entire room and were released through the windows to the outside. The shocked Seungha stared in horror at the rapidly approaching cloud of gas. At that moment, Ray grabbed the girl in an armful and rushed out. A moment later, he jumped through the window to the outside, clutching Seungha tightly to him. He jumped into the water without letting her out of his arms. Only a splash remained on the surface of the water. After pulling Ray out of the water, Seungha laid him down on the sand and tried to bring him to his senses. She gave him first aid to get him out of the water he had swallowed. Ray opened his eyes and stared dumbfounded at the girl looming over him. He cried out in fright as she didn't kiss him. Could it be that Seungha had decided to send him to the other world? But Ray suddenly faltered when he saw the girl's condition. She could barely stand on her feet. Seunghee's whole body was shivering. Suddenly, Ray realized that the girl was sobbing. He asked if she was afraid of being alone. Wiping her tears, Seunggi replied that she could do well on her own. It was just the wind that made her eyes water a little. He told her that she must have forgotten that he was a mutant. The poison has little effect on him, but if he goes into a waking state, he'll be torn apart and die in agony. So in the future, he asks her to refrain from kissing him so as not to ruin him before his time. Pensive, Seungga said, so that means it is his Achilles heel. Tensing up, he asked what she was up to. Ray frowned and asked how they were going to get to Pepe. After thinking for a moment, Seungga said that since he was a cook, there was a place he would have to visit. They could get there quickly using the sewers as a road. Deciding that there was no time to waste, they went to the place where Seungha hoped to find the cook. As they climbed the stairs, Ray asked where he was going to go. She answered to where the best tools and products were still stored. Also a very safe and easily accessible place. He asked incredulously if they could really get there so easily. Let him not forget he is still poisoned. Smiling, Seungga told him to just trust her. Frowning, Ray replied, getting even more worried when she said that. Reaching the right building, they began to climb the stairs to the top floor. They had already traveled several floors, but Seungha was still walking upward, leading Ray with her. He was beginning to think that this damn staircase would never end. Exhausted, he yelled out what she said about it being easy to get up there. How much further up would they go? The girl replied that it was so easy to get to the top. He yelled that she hadn't warned him that easy to get to meant climbing to the top floor of the tallest building in the city. Who in their right mind would want to climb that high rise? The building could fall down at any moment. She said that's why it's a good place to open a restaurant. The guy shouted furiously, what if he's not there? He will die now. Seungga replied that she was sure he was here somewhere. Let him just trust her. He asked if she were in his shoes, would she believe him? Finally, they reached the topmost floor and saw the sign of a restaurant. She said they were here. If he wasn't here, there would be some of his subordinates here anyway, so they could easily get to him. At that moment, they heard a noise and looked up to see something falling from the ceiling. Frowning, Ray asked what it was. The building was definitely not falling down right now. The girl suggested he check it out. Maybe there was someone in there right now. They decided that they should go up to the roof and check it out well. They were carefully climbing up the stairs when Seungga suddenly stopped. She said she had something to take. Let her go first. Ray excitedly told her not to go too far away. With a hum, she replied that she knew better than him about safe distance. He grumpily replied for her to take whatever she wanted there. Climbing up to the roof, Ray looked around and decided there wasn't much to see. At that moment, he looked up and looked into the distance. The guy was dumbfounded. He suddenly realized that from here, the whole city was in the palm of his hand. You could see absolutely everything. Suddenly, Ray heard a strange movement behind him and turned around frightened. Behind him, a man with a scythe from the safe zone embraced the magical energy of the table. The guy was standing on the edge of the roof in front of the hunter and had nowhere to run. Ray gritted his teeth in anger and stared at him with all his body feeling the terrifying aura. He realized that this was definitely the hunter, but he wouldn't be able to defeat him in this state. Sweating with terror, the boy thought that this was the end. There's nowhere to run. If Seungha came out here right now, they'd both be finished. Grinning evilly, the hunter swung his deadly scythe. Ray stood there, his eyes rounded in horror, not knowing what to do. The hunter's arms began to stretch. Releasing his huge claws, he extended them towards the boy standing on the edge. Suddenly, Ray heard a furious scream behind the sinister hunter. Clutching a huge knife in his hand, Seungha was rushing towards him. The shocked Ray only had time to think about what this fool was doing. She couldn't handle the hunter. Rapidly approaching the hunter, Seungha shouted furiously at Geronimo. The hunter dodged carefully so that the girl wouldn't hit him with her deadly sword. And without stopping, she swiftly rushed past, still clutching it in her hand. The dumbfounded hunter looked at the girl who rushed past. He shouted fearfully, at least she can see who she's aiming at. But Seungga did not answer. The girl knocked him off his feet and swiftly flew from the roof of the building straight down. The dazed Ray screamed in horror, realizing that they were being hit and falling. The pair were rapidly flying down from the tallest building in the city. A shocked Ray screamed that Seungga was doing this and they were going to crash. If he knew he was going to end up like this, he would have at least tried to fight him. She said she was talking about this place being easy to get to, so it's easy to get out. The boy shouted angrily that she had not warned him that this was a direct road to the underworld. The girl responded by telling him to immediately hug her as tightly as possible and not let go. Angry Ray shouted that Seungha was even talking such nonsense. Looking at him indifferently, she calmly replied that he would do it anyway. The dumbfounded guy couldn't understand what she was saying and what she was going to do. At that moment, Seunghi's parachute opened, and they were thrown upwards by the air current. Grabbing onto the girl as hard as he could, Ray was surprised to see that she had a parachute. She replied that the building had been used before not only as an observation deck, but also as a skydiving site. He asked why she was only talking about it now. He realizes that he often doesn't listen to her or interrupts her, but this is too much. The girl replied that they needed to get to the village quickly. Getting angry, he asked if she was not listening to him at all. Ray asked what about Pepe, why they should go back to the village. She replied that since he could find her even here by scent, the village was in danger too. Even if he was against it, she still had to warn them. Ray replied that he didn't mind. A surprised Seungha said, but they don't know who they are or how many they are, and he will go anyway. He replied that he has one long-time debt to them too. The girl looked at Ray carefully and realized that he was determined. Looking down, Ray fearfully asked if she knew how to land. Seungha replied that he should just let him trust her. Suddenly, something went wrong and they got tangled in the slings. He asked why she keeps saying to trust her, and it turns out like this. The parachute got caught on the edge of a cliff. Seungha said she knew how to land, but she didn't say she was good at it. Annoyed, Ray yelled out what she thought was a landing. At that moment, the slings broke from the strain and they crashed into the snow with a crash. The girl said, that's how it worked. Ray cursed furiously, calling her a dummy. Soon they were back at the entrance to the tunnel leading to the refugee shelter. After some thought, Sungha decided that they should evacuate everyone first. The main thing now was to get here before the bloodthirsty hunters from the safe zone got here. At that moment, a dazed Ray noticed a variety of footprints in the snow. He said it seemed they had come too late. The hunters had already been here. Ray looked around and said that the footprints showed that a whole unit had been brought here. They carefully entered the tunnel and headed towards the shelter. Ray noticed that it was too quiet. With hope in her voice, Sungha said that there might be some people hiding in the far passages. The tunnel is very long. At that moment, they suddenly heard footsteps and became alert. An elder came out of the side passage and told them not to worry. Seeing the elder, Sungha was overjoyed. She said it was good that everything was fine. Sighing, the elder replied that other than the other 10 people, no one had time to hide. He felt very ashamed of himself. While the others were taken away, he was cowardly hiding. The girl asked where all those who had been taken from here had gone. The elder told them to follow him and they set off. He warned Ray and Sungha to keep their heads down as low as possible. They mustn't spot them. In front of them was a group of captured people being thoroughly searched. Ray warned that they were chemist troops. If they are not careful, a frustrated Sungha told them to forgive her. She couldn't say it before, but it was all because of her. The elder asked what she was talking about. He doesn't know everything, but first they need to save the people. First, they need to gather those who are left and use the traps they have prepared. They need to proceed as carefully as possible. He ordered Ray to watch the left side and Sungha to watch the right side carefully. He would gather the rest of them. They took their positions and began to watch what was happening. Ray asked Sungha if she knew anything about the traps he was talking about, but the girl didn't answer. Getting angry, he angrily said that she was even now ignoring him. Suddenly, Ray realized that something was wrong. Why Sungha is not answering him anything? At this moment, the shocked guy guessed that she wasn't around. His body immediately reacted to her absence. With his last strength, he climbed out of his hiding place and noticed the elder and the captive Sungha. The boy was coughing desperately, losing what little strength he had left. He was very sick. Seeing him, Sungha shouted desperately for them to let her go immediately. The elder looked sadly at the girl who was being held tightly by the chemists. She screamed for the elder to quickly help Ray get to her. He must be close by. Clutching their victim tightly, the chemist told the old man not to scare them like that. He replied that he had given them the girl with the flame as promised, and now they should let the men go. Hearing these words, the shocked Sungha looked at him dumbfounded. The elder told her to forgive him. It was the only way to save the villagers. He is willing to do anything to save the village. She must understand him. He can't sacrifice everything for her. The girl screamed that she understands everything. Let him just help Ray to get to her. He replied that he doesn't know exactly, but it seems he can't be far away from her. He won't help her, though. If he gets better, he'll try to save her. Then they'll all die. He's a mutant. At that moment, he noticed that the guy was slowly creeping towards them. Gathering his remaining strength, Ray tried to cover the remaining distance. The girl desperately shouted his name and tried to break free from his captivity. The chemist held her tightly and then Sungha bit his arm with all her might. The chemist's hands were snapped open in pain and the girl broke free from his grasp. She swiftly rushed towards the dying guy to save him. As Ray stretched out his arms in desperation, he thought about the fact that he was almost there. There was only a little bit left. At that moment, the elder pulled out a huge sharp knife and headed towards the trap. Swinging it as hard as he could, he shouted that the boy would excuse him. With a sharp stab, he cut the thick rope holding the trap. At that moment, a chasm opened up and Ray flew down. The dumbfounded boy, his eyes rounded in horror, was falling into the trap. Seeing this, Sungha cried out desperately and rushed to the edge of the abyss. At this moment, Ray was falling into the deep abyss, unable to do anything. The light was getting farther and farther away from him, and he mentally said goodbye to his life. Soon, the sky turned into a small white dot far above. And after a couple minutes, the desperate boy could see nothing but darkness. Freeing himself, Sungha ran to the edge of the abyss but was immediately grabbed by the chemist. Soon all the villagers were shackled. The chemists chased them away. Armed chemists guarded them from all sides and drove them away like cattle. The bound Sungha was led on a rope guarding her from all sides so she wouldn't try to escape. The elder rushed after them and shouted, "Didn't they have a deal?" He gave her to them and they should release all the captured people. The chemist smirked and replied that the old man had no conscience at all. He had just easily betrayed a girl he was quite close to, and he's asking his stranger to keep his promise. He has no conscience at all. Hearing those words, the elder was shocked. He had hoped to save the people in this way. The chemist said that the old man should be grateful to him for letting him live. In despair, the elder fell to his knees before him. He couldn't just walk away. The chemist said who in times like these would let so many test subjects go. The chained men with their heads down wandered surrounded by armed chemists. The elder shouted that they had gotten what they wanted. And wouldn't it be hard to move this many people to a new place? Laughing, the chemist replied that who told him that they would take them all. Hearing these words, the elder was shocked. He realized that many would die. Taking out a pill, the chemist said they would give them the pill right here, and those who survive will be taken with them. That's 10%. The shocked elder only now realized what he had done. He looked on in horror. At that moment, the chemist commander ordered his subordinates to begin the experiment. Suddenly, they heard the girl screaming for them to stop immediately. With a huge knife that was hidden under her clothes, she cut the ropes. The astonished chemist looked at the girl, not understanding what she was going to do. Putting the knife to her throat, Sungha screamed that if they lay a finger on them, she would destroy herself. They needed her alive. The chemist replied that of course she was right. It would be better to take her alive. She would be very useful to the top of the militia. That would be good, of course. But he wouldn't lose anything by killing her. He may need her, but he doesn't care about her personally. He will just say that when they found her, she was already dead. Sungha replied angrily, telling him not to make her laugh. Failure to obey an order was punishable by annihilation. Or he didn't know. The chemist replied that whether or not to believe him was her own business. She could kick herself and then they would see who was right. Suddenly, a deadly sword appeared near the chemist's face. The man asked then, how about going to the other world himself? Seeing him, the girl was shocked. She dumbfoundedly asked why him. Threatening with a crushing knife on the chemist's shoulders was the same guy in bandages. Continuing to hold the knife at his throat, Sunga shouted why he was here. Smirking, he said, didn't he say? He is her fan after all. Getting angry, the girl shouted why all of a sudden. They had seen him getting orders from the militia. At that moment, the chemist asked if he thought he could save her alone. He can't do it. He's alone. Glaring his eyes, the guy angrily replied that he was never really alone. The shocked girl looked dumbfounded at what was happening. The chemists who were standing behind her suddenly dropped their masks and threw them on the ground. After a moment, several armed men stood around the girl. The shocked chemist shouted dumbfoundedly, what is even going on here? What are people from the GK neighborhood doing here? How did they manage to get here? Their organization does not seek power at all. He left the militia and wanted to remain neutral. Why would they want to interfere? The leader said they couldn't refuse him. The man in bandages grinned and said thank you. They grinningly replied that it was nothing. The chemist shouted that they were nuts. Even so, do they really think they can beat them and get out of here alive? The guy grinned and asked how many other militias he thought were here that weren't real militias. The dumbfounded chemist shouted angrily that there was no such thing. The guy repeated the question. How many other GK members does he think are here? The stunned chemist replied that he would not know until they took off their gas masks. Laughing, he said that the chemist doesn't think that the GK Mafia's best soldiers are afraid of some poison gas. But he has one way out. If he lets Seonga go with them, they will let him go and leave this place quietly. The chemist replied that if he lets her go, he's not a survivor anyway, so he would just destroy them all with poison. At that moment, the guy grabbed the gas mask of the shocked chemist. After a moment, he forcefully yanked the gas mask off his face, exposing his face. The terrified chemist screamed in horror for him to immediately return his mask. Glaring furiously, the guy said he'd better make a quicker choice. Pointing his finger at the sky, he warned that very soon the sun would go below the horizon, and as soon as it got darker, his boys would wipe them all out. With a wicked grin, the chemist replied, no, as soon as the sun goes down, everyone will die here, because that's when they'll arrive, and then it will be the end of them all. Laughing, he added that that's when they'll see who's bluffing. The chemist shouted that he couldn't see anything. Soon there will be moonlight to illuminate the cave. Until then, everyone must defend their position, and have them block the exit. The subordinates shouted for him to eat. At that moment, the boy asked what he had decided. Grinning, the chemist said that in any case, he cannot destroy his only hostage, and once he destroyed him, his men would fill the cave with poison gas. The guy replied that there was one thing. How is he going to spray the gas if all his men are destroyed? At that moment, the full moon rose in the sky, illuminating everything around him. A few minutes later, the moonlight penetrated the cave, illuminating everything that was going on. The dumbfounded chemist saw the GK soldiers moving swiftly, tearing off their gas masks. Swinging their huge swords, they destroyed their enemies one by one. The leader of the GK soldiers grinned and shouted that they had cleaned up the place. Falling to the ground, the shocked chemist cried out in horror as to how this was possible. Looking at the terrified chemist, he said that this is it. They are done with the militia. Bowing, the guy said that now he owed them a favor. If anything is needed, they will definitely help. Smiling, the leader of the GK soldiers replied fine. They would take advantage of the offer. If he needed any more help, he could ask any time. But he didn't get a chance to say anything and was dumbfounded. Suddenly, he was attacked from behind and delivered a powerful and deadly blow. The astonished boy and Seonga looked on in horror, not immediately realizing what was happening. They saw the body of the wounded ringleader crushed by the huge scythe and fall to the ground. Behind him, the bloodthirsty hunter from the safe zone was flying swiftly. Laughing evilly, the chemist shouted that he had warned that they would all die here. He would see how they handled him. The wounded soldier leader fell to the ground barely alive. Before him stood the bloodthirsty hunter. Extending his ugly arms, he prepared to strike again and finish off the leader. At that moment, a guy in bandages rushed towards him with a cry of fleeing swiftly. He shouted for him not to worry about him. After all, he couldn't even complete his mutasi. At that moment, the hunter's deadly scythe flew towards him. To stay alive, the leader dodged it and jumped aside with his sword in front of him. He was shocked to see that the scythe had split his sword in two. He flew aside and collapsed to the ground with a thud, realizing that they could not win. A GK soldier rushed to him and asked if the commanders were all right. With difficulty, the leader ordered him to protect Seunghu. At that moment, a powerful hand with huge claws swooped down and grabbed the girl. To protect the girl, the soldiers blocked the path of the bloodthirsty hand with their swords. They crossed their powerful swords to prevent the hunter from grabbing the girl. The guy who ran up to her shouted that they should try to get out of here first. They ran swiftly to the nearest door, hoping to hide there. They reached the metal door and slammed it shut behind them. At that moment, the hunter's powerful arms split the swords that had stopped her. Throwing the soldiers aside, the hunter rushed in pursuit of Seongha. A moment later, he delivered a crushing blow to the door and cracks crawled across it. The shocked fugitives barely had time to bounce off the door to avoid getting hit. Trying to stop the bloodthirsty hunter, the GK soldier swung his sword and rushed to the attack. Deftly moving on his outstretched arm, he rapidly approached the hunter. He had almost reached the hunter's head and was about to strike. But suddenly, the dumbfounded hunter saw a huge hand rapidly approaching. The huge giant grabbed him and clutched him in his fist, preventing him from attacking the hunter. Clutching him tightly with his huge hand, he lifted the soldier high into the air. After a moment, he brought him down, sharply hitting the ground with all his might. At that moment, he heard the soldiers shouting that they should all attack together. Waving their deadly swords, the GK hunters swiftly rushed to attack. Screaming furiously, they swung their swords to deliver deadly blows to the giant. At that moment, the giant put up his other arm to ward off the attack. With a violent swing, he destroyed all the hunters' swords. Metal shards flew in all directions. After repulsing the soldiers, the giant reached out and grabbed one of them. The giant tightly clenched it in his fist and slammed it to the ground with all his might. With a crushing blow, he swung around and threw the soldier aside. At that moment, rock fragments fell on the hidden fugitives. The guy looked outside and said that they only had to hold out until the pervert came. The surprised girl looked at him and asked what he meant. The guy asked in surprise if those who track people by smell are not called perverts. He asked about the unusual odor coming from Seung-hee. She asked what was wrong with him, but he didn't have time to answer. They heard a loud shout for them to escape. A moment later, a powerful door flew out, almost covering them. The fugitives barely had time to bounce aside to avoid being hit. At that moment, a huge hand appeared in the doorway. A moment later, the huge bloodthirsty giant himself appeared in the doorway. The giant reached out a huge hand to grab the guy sitting on the ground. At this moment, the guy told Seung-hee that it seemed like their future paths were diverging. At that moment, a deadly blow struck the terrifying giant. A shocked Seung-ka saw drops of blood on the ground. She stared in amazement at what was happening. Suddenly, the girl's eyes rounded with surprise at what she saw. Alive and unharmed, Ray flew into the cave and pinned the giant against the wall. He attacked him with a powerful crushing blow and knocked him down. The shocked Seung-ha shouted dumbfoundedly where Ray had come from. Seeing him, the guy smiled and said as expected, "It worked." Smiling Ray said that it was all thanks to Suna's cut hair. The surprised girl asked what her hair had to do with it. How were they able to help? He replied that when they were getting out of the Hwangchudan cave, he had cut off some of her hair. In order not to give them a chance to track them down, Ray took it with him. He felt that even though it was a distance away, the pain had lessened considerably. The enraged Seung-ha shouted if he was still alive, then why didn't he show up right away? The guy in bandages replied that he actually knew everything. Ray asked him to hold out until he regained his strength. Ray sighed and said that even with his hair, he couldn't stay away from her for long. That was why he couldn't recover fully. At this moment, the giant came to his senses and with a fierce scream tried to grab the guy. With a loud clap, he closed his hands hoping to crush Ray, but he was no longer there. He managed to bounce up in time to avoid being hit by the giant's crushing blow. The enraged guy, shouting furiously, rushed to attack the bloodthirsty mutant. To defend against the attack, the giant put out a rock-hard arm in front of him. With a fierce shout, Ray delivered a crushing blow to the mutant's arm. Suddenly, he realized that he had shattered his fist into blood, but he couldn't hurt him. At that moment, the giant tried to grab him with his other huge hand, but the guy still managed to dodge and jumped far away. Looking at the terrifying mutant, Ray said that his fists will not do him any damage, so he had no choice but to awaken. Seung-ha cried out in horror that he hadn't regained his strength yet. He's also been exposed to poison. Awakening would destroy him. Gritting his teeth in anger, he replied that if he did not do so, she would die anyway. At that moment, he saw a deadly dark energy flying toward him. He jumped aside, but the deadly stream followed him without lagging behind. Black threads began to coil around the dazed Ray, trapping him in a ring. In a moment, they completely enveloped his body without giving him a chance to escape. After a couple minutes, the boy was tightly restrained, and the hunter appeared on the doorstep. His huge, crushing scythe pierced through the walls. Rock fragments flew in all directions. The gaunt hand of the sinister mutant gripped Ray's body tightly and squeezed tightly. Grinning and glaring, the hunter extended his other hand with huge claws. A dark, deadly stream of death swiftly reached out to destroy the boy. At that moment, someone delivered a powerful blow with the club at the head of the vicious hunter. He missed, and the deadly blow landed on the wall of the stone cave. The dazed hunter turned around to see his attacker with his eyes glaring angrily. Behind him stood a trembling elder with a club in his hand. The enraged hunter pushed the old man away with his foot, and he flew far to the side. From the powerful blow, the old man flipped in the air and crashed to the ground with a thud. At that moment, Ray noticed that the hunter was distracted by the elder, and the grip on his arm loosened. He swiftly released himself from the grip and lunged for the hunter's crushing scythe. The lad snatched up the deadly weapon and lunged to attack the terrifying monster. Clutching the stolen weapon tightly, he rapidly approached his opponent. Seeing this, the hunter was dumbfounded by this boy's insolence. The boy swung as hard as he could to deliver a crushing blow. But at that moment, the giant's huge arm flew towards him. The evil monster gave Ray a powerful blow with a strong palm, knocking him to the ground. From the powerful blow, the guy collapsed to the ground with a thunderous crash, smashing the rocks with his head. The evil giant put his huge, powerful hand over the fallen Ray. Releasing his internal energy, he transformed his hand into a block of stone. The deadly stone hand was rapidly approaching the guy, threatening to crush him. At that moment, shouting furiously for him to stop, Seung-ha rushed at the giant with a knife. She tried to give him a deadly blow with her sharp knife, but the giant didn't even move from her blow. She did not harm him. Seeing her attack, Ray was terrified and screamed at her to run as fast as she could. But in that instant, the mutant threw the girl's attacker away with a powerful blow of his stone arm. Rapidly flipping over in midair, Seung-ha collapsed to the ground with a thunderous crash. The girl lay motionless, breathing heavily and coughing heavily. The evil giant loomed over her, about to strike and finish her off. Unable to rise, the girl stared in horror at the terrifying mutant. His deadly hand was approaching Seung-hee, about to crush her like a fly. But at that moment, Ray ran up and put his hand out to stop the crushing palm. The guy could barely manage to hold the huge hand. His own hand was injured. He cried out in pain. It was very hard to resist the huge giant. From the powerful pressure, Ray's feet crashed into the ground, destroying the rocks under his feet. The boy's strength was running out. The giant kept increasing the pressure with his huge hand. At that moment, the barely alive Seung-ha opened her eyes and saw Ray weakening, and told him to stop. Realizing that there was no other way out, Ray began to awaken, releasing his inner monster. Barely alive, the girl through ajar eyes thought of Ray that this awakening would destroy him. The evil giant brought his hand down on the ground. Dust and rock fragments flew in all directions. But at that moment, Ray awakened and did not allow the mutant to destroy Seung-ha. The girl watched in horror, afraid that he would die. About to destroy them both, the mutant fiercely clenched a huge fist. Suddenly, the giant felt that something had happened. His fingers did not clench. At this moment, the reborn Ray shattered the giant stone fist and swiftly flew out. Seeing this, the vicious hunter was shocked. He stared dumbfounded at the guy who flew out. Deftly dodging the scattered debris, Ray furiously rushed to attack. Clenching his fist and flashing his eyes, he flew towards the evil giant. A moment later, he delivered a crushing blow to the huge mutant, knocking it to the ground. All the while, the wounded Sunga continued to lie on the ground amidst the rubble. A guy in bandages ran up to her and said they had to get out of here. He had just picked her up in his arms and was running away when the crushed giant collapsed in her place. Suddenly, the bandaged boy was horrified to see the hunter's deadly scythe coming at him. But in time, Ray grabbed the crushing weapon, preventing it from striking. The bandaged boy shouted for Ray to hold them off until they got out. Using all his power, Ray furiously clutched the hunter's crushing scythe. After a moment, he violently split it in two. Splinters sprinkled in all directions. At that moment, a huge giant without an arm jumped towards the dazed guy. With all his weight, he fell on Ray, completely covering him. The ground shook from the powerful impact, and rocks and cracks flew in all directions. In order not to be crushed, Ray put his foot in front of him, not letting the giant fall. Using all his power, he pushed the evil mutant aside. With a powerful push, the shocked giant flew upward, flipping in the air. A moment later, he collapsed with a clatter at the feet of the startled hunter. Rising to his feet, Ray asked the shocked hunter, "Why do they want this girl? Do they really want to destroy her? Don't they want her alive?" Smirking, the hunter said that was surprising. A level 2 specimen had appeared in the Gibla zone, who's been able to become conscious. But he's asking him strange questions. Since the fire disappeared, the only ones who have benefited from it are them, the Mafia. Isn't it normal to get rid of the competition? He laughed evilly. Glaring furiously at the sinister mutant, Ray replied that he assumed it was. He shouted that he had no choice but to destroy it, and rushed to attack. The hunter replied that he was defiant, even though it was his phrase shamed him for some reason. With his fist in front of him, Ray swiftly attacked the hunter, intending to destroy him. To protect himself from the blow, the mutant put his arms out in front of him. Extending them in front of him, he pushed the attacking Ray away, preventing him from delivering a devastating blow. But at that moment, the dazed hunter noticed that his arm was damaged. At that moment, Ray was rapidly approaching him with his fists clenched furiously. The hunter covered his head with his hands to avoid the attack, and Ray struck a powerful blow. The shocked mutant realized that the guy's blows were damaging his arms. The enraged Ray struck again and again, damaging the hunter. The mutant was enraged. This guy's attacks were doing significant damage to him. At that moment, Ray attacked him again. He gritted his teeth in anger, but clenched his fist to deliver a powerful blow. To defend himself from the guy's crushing attacks, the hunter twisted his arms. The mutant put up a shield made from his own hands. But Ray's power was enough to break through that defense. He delivered a devastating blow. The powerful blow sent the hunter flying far away, leaving a furrow in his wake. He finally managed to stop, but he flew far outside the cave. Peeking out from behind the rock, the guy in bandages said that so far, everything was going well. It looked like Ray might even win. Sitting with his bandaged arm against the wall, Sunga was happy for Ray. At this moment, the guy carefully peeked out of the cave looking around. He looked carefully at the crushed hunter sitting on the ground. The mutant sat on the ground with his head down, breathing heavily from his injuries. Ray thought it looked like he had hit him hard enough. Time to call it a day. Suddenly, the hunter got to his feet and looked at Ray and laughed gloatingly. Seeing this, the guy gritted his teeth in rage. He had already spent a lot of energy and could barely stand on his feet. The sneering mutant said that he had completely forgotten. The guy is just dying of pain right now. He thinks he should show him something right now. It's a level 3 mutation. The hunter's eyes flashed with sinister fire and he laughed gloatingly. Ray, Sunga, and the bandage guy dazedly rounded their eyes, expecting something terrible. At that moment, the hunter began to release powerful streams of dark energy. Deadly streams with crushing scythes at the end of them stretched out from his body. Stunned, Ray looked at the transformed mutant, realizing that his power had increased. The hunter had become a monster with many deadly limbs. Seeing this, Ray was stunned. He fiercely cursed that this was bullshit. Suddenly, the deadly tip of a crushing scythe appeared in front of him. To avoid the deadly attack, Ray jumped high into the air. The deadly tentacles of the vicious hunter immediately reached for him. The boy tried to fight his way through the dense stream, dodging the blows. The deadly tentacles enveloped him from all sides, trying to grab him. Ray pushed himself away from one of them and tried to jump back as far as he could. But as he neared the ground, the hunter struck at him, shattering the rocks. Dodging the deadly attack, Ray hit the wall with all his might, leaving a dent in it. The terrifying transformed hunter grinned maliciously at Ray. The boy was losing strength. It was getting harder and harder for him to dodge the deadly attack. Realizing that things were bad, the bandaged boy rushed to Sungha and shouted that it was time to get away. But she replied that if they moved any farther away, Ray would get sick. The agitated boy shouted that they would die if they stayed here. Sighing, the girl replied that as long as Ray was around, they could save themselves. She refused to leave for safety while he fought the monster. At this time, Ray's crushing confrontation with the hunter continued. The guy delivered a crushing blow, tearing the tentacles in two. But it didn't help. From all sides, new ones came at him again and again. He thought furiously that it was all for nothing. No matter how hard he attacked, the tentacles would regenerate instantly. He must get to the head to deliver a deadly blow and destroy it, but his tentacles are too numerous and too fast. Besides, he's running out of time. He needs to finish this in one blow. Gritting his teeth in anger and clenching his fists fiercely, he launched one last attack. Swiftly pushing away from the deadly tentacles, Ray was closing in on his body. He had almost reached his target when a crushing tentacle appeared in front of him. With a powerful blow, the hunter knocked Ray's attacker aside. Flipping in the air, the boy flew to the ground. Shards of shattered rocks flew in all directions. Ray gritted his teeth in rage and thought about how he might have opened up for once. The mutant grinned evilly and shouted that he was watching the guy run around, but it was time to end this game. Waving deadly tentacles, sinister mutant prepared to attack. Fiercely clenched fists, Ray looked at the enemy prepared to repel the blow. Suddenly, a huge rock landed on the head of the terrifying monster. Raising his head up, he saw the people who were throwing stones and spears at him, shouting, "Go to hell!" Grinning evilly, the hunter said it was interesting. There are still gnats here. Glaring furiously, he shouted that they must be swatted away now. At that moment, a powerful crushing blow flew at his head. Part of its deadly tentacles were torn off. Droplets of blood flew in all directions. Losing his balance, the monster flew into the wall, destroying it with his body. The dazed guy in bandages and Seung-hee watched anxiously. At that moment, Ray ducked down to dodge the flying debris of shattered stones. Looking at his opponent with hatred, he fiercely cursed. His power was not enough to deal with such a monster. At this moment, the regenerated tentacles appeared. The hunter was rising to his feet. After a couple minutes, it reappeared in front of Ray again, trying to deliver a deadly blow. Waving its deadly tentacles, the mutant grinned at the guy. The guy sitting in cover sank heavily to the ground. He thought that Ray could not win. The monster was rapidly approaching the guy sitting on the ground. Each step of the huge tentacle left behind it shattered rocks. Looking at the approaching monster, Ray thought in despair that he didn't want to die. Thinking about why, he decided that it was because he probably wanted to live in another better world. At that moment, his gaze fell on the mutant's hat lying in front of him. The monster screamed how he dared to touch his hat given to him by his boss, and promised to smear it on the ground. Suddenly, Ray felt a strange sensation in his exhausted body. He felt as if his chest was about to burst into tiny pieces. His eyes filled with tears. He mentally begged for salvation. A terrible fear gripped his soul. At that moment, the image of his mother with tears in her eyes came to his mind. His eyes flashed and his body felt painful sensations in every cell. He remembered everything. How they hid with his mother in the shelter and how the hunters came there. He remembered sobbing over the breathless body of his loved one. And a thought struck him. He seemed to realize the reason he was still alive. He remembered Sakana. At that moment, powerful streams of crushing energy were released from Ray's body. The dumbfounded hunter stared in amazement at this guy's transformation. Ray's body was transformed. Power increased and blue streaks crawled across his skin. Seung-hee, who saw his transformation, was also shocked, not realizing what was happening. In front of them stood a reborn mutant enveloped in streams of deadly energy. The dumbfounded guy in bandages stretched out his hands to Ray and shouted that it was impossible. How could such a person still be in the Gibla zone? Sitting exhausted against the wall, Seung-hee asked what was going on with Ray. The astonished guy replied that it was impossible, but Ray had mutated. The girl wondered about Ray, if he could even survive the mutation. Her companion said the mutation responds to the subject's heartfelt desire. In most cases, the greatest changes are due to fear, and those with a desire to destroy greater than their own fear are more likely to have a tentacle-type mutation because of their attraction to weapons and distance. Maybe the mutation came from fear for Seung-ha's life, who almost died in front of Ray. The mutation he received was a deadly fist capable of crushing everything in its path. The transformed Ray's hands were now like powerful blocks of stone. Looking at the mutated Ray, the hunter was dumbfounded and thought it was impossible. He was sure that he could barely survive a level 2 mutation, so how did he manage it? At this moment, the enraged Ray furiously glared with his eyes shouted for him to go to the other world. He shouted Sakan in a frenzy and rushed to attack the dazed hunter. Pushing himself off the ground, he swiftly flew into the air to attack his enemy. At this moment, the infuriated hunter shouted furiously as he dared to call the boss by name. With a lightning-fast release of his deadly tentacles, he aimed them towards the guy. The two powerful opponents came together in a crushing confrontation. The enraged hunter was amazed that this guy could resist him. Deftly moving through the tentacles Ray had extended to him, he approached the hunter with lightning speed. He clenched his powerful stone fists in preparation to deliver a devastating blow. With eyes glaring furiously and teeth clenched in anger, Ray flew at his enemy. The enraged hunter unleashed all his deadly tentacles to grab the boy. The mutant shouted furiously that he was actually a hunter of the Great Sakan. Combining all his tentacles into one, he aimed it at the attacking guy. Seeing this, Seung-hee rounded her eyes in horror. He was afraid for Ray. The deadly tentacle came crashing down on the mountain, shattering the cave where Seung-hee was hiding. The bandaged boy shielded the girl from the huge fragments of shattered rocks. At that moment, the dumbfounded monster felt that this guy was trying to resist him. With his huge fist and the deadly tentacle, Ray held him without letting him strike. The enraged mutant shouted angrily that this was simply impossible. Ray's crushing hands ripped the deadly tentacle to shreds. The astonished hunter, eyes glaring, screamed furiously, unable to believe what was happening. Having defeated the tentacles of the mutant, Ray was rapidly approaching him. Fiercely clenched, powerful fists swung to deliver a crushing blow. He swung his powerful fist to deliver a devastating blow to the mutant. The monster fiercely cursed, unable to dodge the crushing attack. From the powerful blow, Ray mutant lost his balance and flew sideways. As he flipped in the air, he collapsed to the ground with a thud, smashing the rocks with his body. Seeing this, Seung-hee's eyes were dumbfounded. She couldn't believe it. The crushed mutant was lying amidst a pile of rubble, unable to get up. At that moment, Ray was approaching him to finish him off. The people watching this were shocked that this guy was able to defeat the hunter. Lowering himself to the ground, Ray clenched his fists and approached the hunter, lying on the ground. He stood at the bottom of a huge crater looking at the defeated enemy with hatred. The hunter smiled gloatingly as he looked at Ray and said that they would still meet in the underworld, no matter where he can get to. Even if he didn't die along the way and kept going, Sakan-san would be waiting for him at the end. Soon the mutant's body began to disintegrate into small pieces flying around in the wind. Standing at the edge of the funnel, Ray watched the sinister hunter disappear. The bolder men timidly approached the edge to look at what was left of the monster. Their eyes rounded in surprise as they stared at the bottom of the sinkhole, still not believing what was happening. Suddenly, one man shouted joyfully that they were alive. Finally, all the people realized this and shouted joyfully that they were alive. The wounded Seungha breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that the battle was over. Smiling, the guy in bandages told the girl that everything had happened just as she had said. Ray stood at the bottom of the funnel, barely able to stand on his feet, while the people around him cheered. The guy was breathing hard. He had absolutely no strength and energy left. The worried girl saw Ray's condition and was scared for him. Suddenly, the guy's eyes rolled back. He started to fall on his side, losing consciousness. Finally losing consciousness, Ray collapsed to the ground with a thud. The girl screamed and rushed to the fallen guy to help him. After a while, they carried Ray to a tent on the edge of the cliff. After laying him down and dressing his wounds, Seungha was on duty at his bedside. The bandaged boy said he was in a bad way. The girl put her hands on the guy's chest, trying to bring him to his senses. Suddenly, Ray jumped up sharply in the bed and screamed loudly and frightened. The sissy tried to calm him down. She said that everything is fine, he was safe. The boy screamed that it had nothing to do with that. She kneed him in the arm. Seungha said she should have pressed harder. He was actually unconscious in there, forget it. He's the reason they all survived. Sighing heavily, Ray said he had to get to the safe zone. The girl told him to calm down. They never got the map after all. The guy in bandages said he agreed with Ray. They better leave this place quickly. It's not safe for Miss Seunghee to stay here. They need to prepare food and get the map by all means. The girl asked how they will do it without Pepe. He replied that when he communicated with her through notes, she told him a lot about this recipe. He had already found some good groceries and started cooking. The boy beckoned them to follow him. The three of them walked down a narrow corridor between the rocks. Ray asked why they were going to such a remote place. The guy answered that the people here were incredibly hungry. If any of them smells food, they will go crazy and run here. But there is a place here where you can cook without worrying about it. Soon they reached a ledge on the edge of the cliff where a cauldron was already hanging. The boy said he was trying to replicate the recipe as much as possible. Smelling the creepy smell, Ray said it wasn't something that wouldn't be able to make her smile. It would ruin her. The guy suggested that Seunghee light the fire. She wondered what he was trying to do with it. Moving closer to the fire, Seungha started a fire under a hanging cauldron. Soon the fire grew hot and the water in the cauldron boiled. The dish began to cook. Staring mesmerized at the fire, the guy in bandages said he now understood why some people were so obsessed with it. He offered Ray a taste, but he replied that it wasn't the cook who should taste his dish first. While they were arguing, the girl went to the cauldron and took the spoon first. Suddenly, Seungha shouted that it was too much. The guys looked at her dumbfounded. An agitated Ray asked if it was so inedible. The girl replied that he should try it first. Ray hesitantly took a spoonful. He said that how could it be edible, but he decided to try it. Suddenly, the dumbfounded Ray's eyes widened in surprise. He couldn't believe it. He shouted in amazement how this was even possible. Where did this flavor come from? At that moment, doubt appeared in Seunghee's mind. She asked if he was by chance. At that moment, the guy threw off his bandages and appeared before him in full health. The girl was dumbfounded and wondered if he was the same Pepe. Smiling and fixing his glasses, the boy answered correctly, "He is Pepe." Dumbfounded Ray said that there was a terrible odor coming from him. He could smell it. Pepe replied that the well-synthesized urine of a male elephant can give off a burning smell from a kilometer away. A surprised Seungha asked why he was still hiding his identity. The cook replied that it was true that he had traveled all the way here in search of fire, but he was constantly kidnapped and locked up. He wanted to live a normal life for a while to see what it was like. A shocked Seungha asked what he was talking about. Interrupting her, Pepe said they should leave the talking for later. First, they should give the cooked dish to Auntie. The three of them went to the storekeeper's cave to give the Auntie a treat. The girl warned that the woman had been starving a lot. If she ate in a hurry, she might get sick. We must be careful. The cook Pepe approached the unfortunate aunt in a hurry, carrying a dish in front of him. Leaning over, he said that they had cooked the porridge she was talking about. The shocked aunt looked at him with her eyes rounded in surprise. With trembling hands, she took the dish offered to her, still not believing what was happening. Passing the plate, Pepe looked sadly at the unhappy woman. Auntie took the bowl of porridge but did not eat it. She held the plate tightly in her hands. Watching her, the surprised Ray wondered if she wouldn't eat it. Suddenly, they realized that holding the plate in her hands, the woman was heading up the cliff with it. Looking at her, Ray couldn't figure out where she was going with the porridge. All three of them headed after her. Auntie came to the edge of the cliff where a large round rock stood. At that moment, Pepe guessed that it was a memorial to her dead son. In trembling hands, the woman brought the plate to the monument and set it beside it. The woman hugged and stroked the stone, and tears streamed down her cheeks. She called out to her son, and a dumbfounded Ray said she began to talk. Auntie said his mother was near. Because of such a negligent mother, he had been cold and hungry all this time. The day he was in so much pain, she wanted to make him porridge for the last time. But because there was no fire, she couldn't. He should forgive her for being so late. He's in a better world now where he doesn't need anything. Let him just take her in one last time. Wiping away her tears, she said she'd had enough of being sad. She won't worry about him anymore, and she hoped he was happy there. Auntie smiled for the first time in years. At that moment, the storekeeper saw her. His hands shook with excitement. He came to his wife, who was smiling through her tears, and hugged her tightly. Smiling, Pepe said he thought it was time for them to get out of here. At that moment, the survivors of the refugee settlement came to them. The procession was led by a wounded village elder walking on crutches. Seeing him, Seungha was very surprised and asked what he was doing here. Lowering his head, the elder apologized to them for what he had done. He said they were terrified. They had no other way to save the settlement. He begged Mrs. Seunghu to forgive him for his betrayal, and asked her to accept it. A dumbfounded Ray saw a man handing them a bag with images of the area. The elder said it was a map of the road to the safe zone. The owner had given it to him last night and asked him to give it to them. Maybe they can make their world back the way it was before the burnout. He also handed over a bag and said it was the roots of plants the villagers had managed to get. Terrible food, but it's all they have. At that moment, the cook knocked the bag out of the elder's hands and said that it was not worth taking these roots. The bag fell to the ground and the edible roots scattered around it. Pepe said that after countless betrayals and kidnappings, he was able to learn one lesson. Someone who betrayed you once is highly likely to do it again, even if he doesn't know the situation completely. Seonga came up behind him and put her hand on his shoulder. Pepe was surprised. Fixing his glasses, Pepe said that it may seem arrogant, but if they do so. But at that moment, he heard extraneous sounds and looked down in surprise. They saw Ray, who was happily devouring the roots he had brought. Eating the roots with a satisfied face, the guy said that it was delicious. Ray took out another root and offered it to Seungki. The girl took the root offered to her and started eating it too. Looking at Ray, Pepe said that this guy had no self-preservation instinct at all. Dumbfounded to see Seungki eating it too, he was surprised to see Seungki eating it too. Walking up to the elder, Suna told him thank you very much for everything he did for her. After she lost her parents, he was the only one who cared for her. The astonished elder sobbed and fell to his knees in front of her and fervently asked her to forgive her. Tears flowed down his wrinkled cheeks. He said he was very sorry for her. The girl knelt down beside him and tried to comfort the elder. Watching this, Pepe smiled and said that as expected. Seonga had forgiven him. After thinking for a bit, Pepe decided that he should still go with them to the safe zone. After a while, the three of them returned to the car in which Ray lived. Angry, the guy yelled at Pepe, "How long is he going to tail them for?" The cook smiled and replied that he was telling the best cook in the world to stay away from the fire. A furious Ray yelled that this was Pepe's problem and it was none of their business. Pepe asked if they were going to continue on their way like this without hiding the smell of the flames coming from Seungki. He could create incense that would be able to neutralize the smell. Still angry, Ray shouted that Pepe was lying so they wouldn't kick him out. Thinking about it, Seonga replied that it would actually be useful on the way to the safe zone. Ray shouted that the bastard was a bloody fox who had been lying to them all this time and didn't even raise an eyebrow. How could they be of any use to someone who didn't know what was in his head? Smiling, Pepe replied that a former researcher and someone who'd already been in the safe zone. No more useful than a mutant who can't survive if Seungki isn't around. Enraged, Ray grabbed him by the pecs. At that moment, Pepe pulled out a baggie of powder and blew on it. Frightened Ray with a scream, his eyes fell to the floor. Pepe calmly said that it was a very good eye medicine. Let him not be thankful. At that moment, Seonga asked since he was already in the safe zone, then he knows how to get there. He replied that like he said before, he was often kidnapped. That's how he traveled, so he doesn't know the exact way. But if he sees a map or a name, this information will be enough for him to find the way. The girl asked if he knows the reason for the increase in the number of mutants. Pepe answered that it is a mystery even for him. They are not creating a cure, but the number of mutants keeps increasing. Seonga decided that to fight them, more information is needed. Smiling, Pepe replied to get such information they have no other option but to get to the safe zone. Ray shouted furiously when it was Pepe who became one of them. Ignoring the cook said first we need to look at the map and decide where to go. Thinking about it, Pepe said that if they could do that, they could take the train part of the way. Still angry, Ray shouted that the train was barely holding up as it was. How was he going to get it to go? Drawing lines on the map, he replied that that's why he wanted to look somewhere. Frowning, Ray asked why he was suggesting they make a big detour. He replied that they needed to fix the train. Before the burnout happened in these parts, there was a town here, where iron tools were made and repaired, a city of blacksmiths. Soon the three of them traveled to the blacksmith city in the Roxane district. At this time, there was a man sitting on the roof of one of the tall buildings with a hammer. He was trying to repair a satellite dish while wiping sweat from his mouth. The guys were trying to move the train using a train carriage. Sona was standing on the roof looking through a telescope. Ray asked Pepe if there really was a town in the border area that was useful to them. He replied that there were still some who had decided not to try to get into the safe zone and settle down. They're trying their best to make it a better place. To get to the safe zone, you must first pass through the chaos zone where the fighting never stops. So the farther away from the safe zone, the calmer it gets. Especially in such an important place as the city of blacksmiths where the mafia from the chaos zone can supply goods. Even though the border zone isn't much better than the haze zone, it's enough. Seonga said that fixing the train is not an easy task. Even if it's the border zone, that they are cooperating with the mafia. Smiling, Pepe said that's why instead of going there for repairs, it's better to bring someone here who can repair it. Pepe threw the handle of the dozer and Ray shouted he didn't use the force at all. With doubt in his voice, Seonga asked if they could find such a person. He replied that who knows, maybe they could find a Suna fan like him. At this point, getting angry, Ray shouted maybe he could already help him finally. At this time in the city of blacksmiths in the Rokum district, Pakin continued to master. He was carefully scribbling on the paper trying to understand the notes from the notebook. As he continued to read the calculations, he tried to repeat everything written there. At that moment, two men appeared from behind and said, so this is where Pakin was hiding. Aren't there enough supplies in their neighborhood? Why can't he meet the quota? Showing a box of nails, Pakin said these were all the nails he had made today. He was thinking of giving them directly to Mr. Roxon. Grinning, the guy said that he has no skills at all. He only does rank B stuff, so don't let him talk nonsense. At that moment, he snatched the notebook he was studying from Paikon's hands. Opening it up, he asked if he was still trying to figure out his father's notes. Why? Did he really think that even if the flames came back, he could use them? An agitated Paikan shouted for him to return the notebook to him immediately. But the boy grinned and gave him a powerful kick with his foot, pushing him aside. From the powerful kick, the guy flew aside and collapsed to the ground with a thud. The villain grinned. Pekin is the one with the least strength here, how dare he attack him? Throwing the notebook at him, he shouted that he didn't give a shit about the notes. He's just a useless bastard. The boy looked sadly at his father's notebook lying in front of him. Hovering over him, the bandit laughed that he was as stupid as his father. Picking up the box of nails, the two men said they would take the nails. Let him try harder in the future, or Pekin doesn't know what will happen to him. If he makes one of his hands inoperable, what does he think will happen? What his little brother would say. After taking the nails, the guys leave, leaving Pekin to ponder. Clutching the notebook to himself, he thought sadly of his father and his life today. At that moment, a boy came up to him and asked if his brother was okay. Sighing sadly, he apologized to his brother and said that they would not be able to get provisions today. The boy asked if there was no fire now. Then why does he cling to his father's records so much? He is suffering because of them after all. Saying sorry, Pekin told him that he liked the idea very much. Just looking at it gives him hope. Hope to be in a world where even a weakling like him can serve for something greater. Looking at his brother, the boy sighed heavily. Pekin said he had an older brother who was constantly teased because of his weakness. And a father who is addicted to alcohol for no reason. It must be very hard on him. The boy replied that hunger can still be tolerated. But thirst. There's no water left at home. What should they do? He said there's a torch at home that he's barely fixed in 2 months. If they gave it to Roxane, they could get water. The excited boy asked if he was talking about the red rebar cutter. Wasn't that the one his father had recently stolen? Pekin was shocked. He shouted desperately throughout the neighborhood, not knowing what to do. At the same time, there was a line of people waiting at Roxane's shelter to trade tools for provisions. The receiver was yelling at the next person what he brought, what he wanted for those D-rank nails. Dropping the crate, he yelled that he had no water for him. Tell him to get out of here. The man replied that he had broken his arm so he couldn't do any better. Let him have at least 1 bottle? He kept begging, but the guards pulled him out so he wouldn't disturb the others. Angry, the receiver said that the further away you go, the fewer useful people there are. With a wave of his hand, he shouted for the next one to come with his tool. Suddenly, an excellent rebar cutter appeared on the table in front of him. The overjoyed receiver said, how did he do it? It was broken. Looking at the man with trembling hands, he wondered if he was still alive. Pointing to the jerry cans, he said he would give him as much water as he needed. Lowering his eyes, the man replied that he didn't need water. He wanted something else. Let them give him alcohol instead of water. He looked at the receiver with subservience. Looking at him, the receiver was shocked. He shouted, has he lost his mind? At that moment, the voice of Mr. Roxane came from behind him and told him to give him what he asked for. In his city, he would either be useful or sold. Those are the rules. At this time, Ray was looking around the train. He said it didn't matter how long it took. If it is not repaired, it will be impossible to continue on the road. Pepe said there's a rule in the town of blacksmiths. They have to return the repaired item by a certain date. There's no one who can repair a train that big and difficult to transport. Sunga said that even if they did, it would be hard to trust each other without revealing their identities and their destination. Thinking, Pepe said that apparently all they had to do was grab the blacksmith discreetly. Ray frowned and asked how they would get to him if the mob was everywhere. Pepe replied that no one knows them but him. He was also able to neutralize Sunghee's scent, so they can pretend to be shoppers and explore the city without any problems. Ray shouted, and what is he going to rest here? Smiling, Pepe replied that he would look for ingredients and cook something. Sunga said she knew he would be quite useful. Grinning, Pepe said it looks like Ray doesn't need any more food. The boy yelled that he didn't need Pepe, but the food was a different story. After a while, Ray and Sunga set off on their journey. They moved through the sewers. As they walked, Ray said that Pepe said that the blacksmiths live around here somewhere. She replied that they should keep their heads down, not until they found someone useful to them. At that point, the guy gestured for her to be quiet and stay quiet. At this time, armed fanatics were moving down the street above them. They were just moving over the sewers where Ray and Sunga were in. A multitude of feet were stepping on the manhole under which they were sitting. Ray carefully regarded them. Cussing furiously, Ray said that the Huanchudan fanatics were here too. Suddenly hearing an extraneous noise and voices, the travelers pressed themselves against the wall. At that moment, armed mobmen were passing over their heads. Waving their swords and grinning maliciously, they walked just above their heads. They were noisily talking as they moved down the street while Ray and Sanha sat breathless. They carefully peered out the drain hole, afraid not to be seen. Cussing, Ray said that this way they wouldn't be able to explore the city properly. Suna replied that they needed to find the blacksmith as soon as possible. At that moment, they heard someone say that he didn't want the rebar cutter to be stolen. That was why he had hidden it. Hearing about the rebar cutter, Suna became wary. At this time, Pekin's father demanded that his son bring more drinks. He replied that the rebar cutter was the last tool they could trade for water. The father must keep his temper in check. Pulling out a notebook, he asked where the incredible man who wrote this had gone. Throwing the notebook away from him, the man became angry and yelled to get it out of his sight. He screamed that he had bet everything for this job, and now what? He had become the most useless fool in the world. What more did he want from him? A flustered Pekin replied that he didn't know. Maybe they would find the fire again, because then they could make so many different things for all the people. Just like how he invented tools in rather difficult times. Looking sadly at his son, he asked if he was really crazy, like people said. Picking up the notebook, Pekin said that moreover the reason why he was reading it. It wasn't because he hated his father. The boy clutched the notebook tightly in his hands. But the man wouldn't listen to him. Growing more and more angry, he shouted whatever. Let him just go and fix things until he ran out of alcohol. Frowning, Pekin looked sadly and hopelessly at his father about to say something. But at that moment, his younger brother moaned that he was very thirsty. Pekin promised to go and look for some water. The frightened boy asked Young if he was going to go there. It's dangerous. Smiling sadly, the brother replied not to worry. He'll be back soon. The boy turned around to leave. His little brother shouted fearfully for him to be more careful. The guy went to the guy who had recently taken all his nails and asked for water. Laughing, the guy asked Pekin if he had the nerve to ask for water so suddenly. He replied that he thought that maybe they had something left over since their father was the district representative. And he also gave up the nails he had recently given them. He really needs water. But the guy kept smiling at the dumbfounded pecan and kicked him harder. From the powerful blow, the guy flew aside and hit his head on a lamppost. The guy shouted furiously what the brat was talking about, when he was the one taking his nails. Tears ran down the guy's cheeks. He promised to do the job for him. Just please give him one bottle of water. The bully frowned and asked if he thought he could repay her with his alcoholic father. Is he really going to make this nonsense about a hand pump from that stupid notebook to conduct water to the neighborhood? Might as well say he's going to run the forge when the fire comes on. Pecan begged for at least a cup of water. The guy yelled that he was pissing him the hell off with his fire nonsense. He swung forcefully to strike Pecan, but his arm was suddenly stopped. A girl suddenly appeared and grabbed the dazed guy's arm, preventing him from striking. Frowning, Sunga said that who knows, maybe the fire will reappear like this guy says. Laughing loudly, the guy shouted, "What kind of crazy woman is this? What is she saying?" Releasing his hand, he swung and shouted that he would show her what happens to a stranger who dares to touch a blacksmith. But at that moment, he was suddenly hit in the face and screamed loudly. Seonga lunged at him and threw him over her hip, dropping him to the ground. The guy collapsed to the ground with a thunderous crash and screamed furiously. He was in shock. The girl stood on top of the guy lying on the ground and cursing furiously and looked at him indifferently. Pecan, who saw all this, was dumbfounded, looking at this brave and strong girl. Getting up from the ground and holding his head, the guy shouted, "How dare she leave him?" She was definitely not a survivor now. She had just made an enemy of the entire blacksmith organization. She was definitely finished. Finally rising up, the guy looked around in surprise. There was no one around. He couldn't understand where they had gone. While he was lying on the ground and cursing loudly, Seongha took Pecan into the sewers. The frightened guy looking at Seongha and Ray asked who they were. Why did they bring him here? If they were talking about flames, they must be from Hwangchudan. When Ray heard that, he got angry. Pecan realized they weren't. Then they must be from the mafia or the militia. Ray smiled and said they should introduce themselves. He thought about the answer. Pecan asked what the guy was talking about. Ray replied that he meant that they are not attached to any of them. You could say they are special. Looking at him, Pecan clarified, maybe they are refugees. Ray was starting to get angry. That's when Suna intervened. She suggested that they be called a secret society. A secret society that would bring the flame back into the world and make it the same again. When Pecan heard this, he was dumbfounded. He asked how this was even possible. The girl replied that they had nothing more to say to the stranger, but at least if he followed them, they promised him that they would create a world where the fire burned brightly. Pecan wondered if they were crazy. Apologizing, he started to back up and said he had to go. He had things to do. Taking out a lighter, Sunga asked he must think they were crazy. However, if he followed them, she would prove her words. The dumbfounded Pecan looked at the girl in surprise, not understanding what she was going to do. But Pecan said he was sorry. But even if all this is true, he can't leave this place without his father and brother. Ray thought about it and said they could probably send them somewhere safer. Scratching his head, the boy replied that his father wouldn't leave town until he was dead. Here is the forge to which he has devoted his life. Even though he says he hates it, he can't get rid of the memories of the forge. Frowning, Ray said that if he stayed, his brother would be fine with his father. But Pecan replied that if he doesn't fulfill the daily work goal, his father will soon be assigned to either a slave or a test subject. At this point, Sunga asked who is responsible for this. Who exactly appoints them? The guy replied that the representative of each district appoints the blacksmith with the lowest performance. But why would they need that information? The girl wondered. Ray asked what she was up to this time. Sighing, Pecan said that he apologizes, but he needs to find water. Can he go? At that moment, the girl told him to take his time and reached into her pocket. After a moment, she handed him a bottle of water and said he could take it. The overjoyed Pecan began to thank them heartily for being so helpful. Sighing, Sunha said that it wasn't enough, but she thought it was better for him to go home now. The boy thanked and said that his brother urgently needed water, so he would go. Soon he ran away quickly, clutching the water bottle tightly in his hands. Pensive, Ray asked if they needed to find another master now. Frowning, Sunga thought about what they should do next. At this time, the representative's son came to the 3rd District Representative Santro's house. Furious, he ran into his father's office and shouted loudly that they needed to talk. Frowning, the father replied, "Why yell so loudly? You can keep your voice down." The infuriated boy yelled for his father to appoint Pecan, Ryan's father, as tomorrow's slave. Because of this, Pecan was beaten up by some stranger. He had attacked him right on the front porch. Frowning with clenched fists, the father replied that he understood. Now the son should go to bed. The still angry boy shouted if his father would honor his request. He replied that this alcoholic carried the rebar carver without telling him. To get Mr. Roxane's attention, he was going to sell it anyway. After fetching the water, Pecan returned home. At that moment, his younger brother ran up to him. He told him that there was a big trouble. They'd taken Dad with them. Sighing heavily, Pecan tried to calm his brother down. He said that he should listen to him very carefully. He would have to do his part from now on. Did he understand him? The dumbfounded boy looked at his brother, who grabbed a huge hammer. The angry Pecan clutched it tightly in his hands and headed for the exit. The terrified younger brother tried to stop him, but he didn't listen to him. He screamed in desperation, trying to reach his brother, but Pecan walked away. At that time, the subordinates of the representative dragged Pecan's drunken father. He hung in their arms and did not even resist, resigned to his fate. The representative said he was babbling about becoming a better engineer, a better blacksmith, and other nonsense. But this look suited him better. Ryan was silent without answering anything in return. The rep told him not to be so sad. Now he would be able to give his children a bottle of water in exchange for his body. Suddenly, he heard a fierce shout for them to take their hands off his father. Pecan came running toward them. Clutching his hammer tightly, he glared fiercely at his enemies. The representative reminded them that selling useless rabble is Roxanne-san's rule. Therefore, they can't have such a useless drunkard in the neighborhood. Paikon replied that his father had always met the norm. With a grin, he answered correctly. Paikon worked hard to help him finish, didn't he? The boy was dumbfounded. He didn't realize the representative knew about everything. The representative said it didn't matter how hard he worked. There was no one in the 3rd district more useless than his father. Lowering his head, Paikon desperately cried out that it wasn't true. His father is not useless. Frowning, the representative looked at him angrily and asked what he was saying. Suddenly, Paikon rushed at him to attack with a shout that there is no one more useless than the armless blacksmith. Seeing this, his father shouted in horror for Paikon to stop and not do this. The men dragging Ryan gave up and he was on his knees begging his son to stop. After a moment, he fell to the ground face down and passed out. Suddenly, Paikon's hammer flew out of his hand and stabbed into the wall. Behind him, Ray was standing behind him swinging the bat. Seeing him, Paikon was shocked. The dumbfounded representative frowned as he stared at the suddenly appearing guy. The flustered guy asked how he got here and what he was doing here. At that moment, Sunga said that his younger brother asked them to save his brother and father. The shocked guy replied that it means they will die after all. Smirking, Ray replied that he will save those who ask for help. Due to his brother's stubbornness, he had no other choice. Pointing at Ryan, Ray asked if they could take the drunk with them. The enraged representative shouted that they were all a bunch of crazy scumbags. At that moment, the guards standing beside him let out sharp knives from their sleeves. A moment later, they lightning quickly rushed forward to attack the outsiders to destroy them. Frowning, Suna said that there were enemies waiting all over the city. Have Ray take care of them as quickly as possible. They have no time to waste. Deftly dodging the guard's crushing attack, Ray jumped aside. A moment later, he circled around him from behind and delivered a powerful, crushing blow. The shocked Ray realized that there was an iron plate on his back. The representative laughed. He didn't think the iron the blacksmiths used was so simple. Their powerful weapons can cut through anything, except for the monsters in the safe zone. Dropping the guard to the ground, Ray gripped his arms tightly, preventing him from standing up and striking. Grinning, he clamped his hand over his opponent's mouth to keep him from screaming. He apologizes, but he doesn't intend to make a fuss. At that moment, Sunga ran past. She was holding a bag of powder in her hand. Suddenly, Sungha took a swing. She threw the bag against the ground with force. At the same moment, acrid smoke billowed out. The representative was shocked when he saw it. He didn't know what this girl was doing. Suddenly getting hit, he covered his head with his hands and tried to dodge. Coughing from the smoke, he was dumbfounded as to what it was all about. Suddenly, the dazed man realized that he was starting to lose consciousness. His consciousness fogged up and he slumped to the ground trying to fight the stupefaction. The representative threateningly said that if they foreigners dared to contact the blacksmiths, not only would the entire organization turn its back on them, but would become their adversary. Mr. Roxane would also become their enemy. Sunga replied that when did the foreigners ever contact the blacksmiths? Who said something like that? Doesn't that mean there won't be any problem if a blacksmith like them lead this county? Already falling prostrate on the ground, the man barely whispered what they were talking about. She replied that he would rest for now. How about this? Paikon becomes the representative of this district. Hearing this, the boy was shocked. Falling into the darkness, the representative whispered that they are crazy cretins. At that moment, a dumbfounded subordinate came running to Mr. Roxane. He said that one of the new organizations that doesn't know about him dares to cause trouble. The mister wouldn't mind informing him personally about the rules of this place. After listening to him, Mr. Saiken replied that anyone who breaks the rules should be executed. The representative was bound and chained to a pillar. He looked around dumbfounded. Across from him, his son sat tied up with his mouth tied shut, his eyes spinning fearfully. The guards who were accompanying the representative were also sitting tied to the columns with their mouths tied. At this time, Ray Sunga and Paikon brought his father to the House of Representatives of the 3rd District. They laid his father to rest and decided how they would proceed. Paikon was scared. Sitting on the table, Ray asked means a district representative becomes someone who has the approval of the majority of the blacksmiths in the district. Pointing to a dumbfounded Paikon, he told him to just become one then. Doubtingly, he replied that usually the strongest person becomes the representative, and he was known to be the weakest in all 3 districts. If he tried to become the representative, it would only make everyone laugh. Frowning, Sunga said that it was not necessary to rely on strength to win their hearts. Not believing in his own strength, Paikon replied that how could someone like him? At this point, Ray asked what about Paikon's father? He could be the representative. The flustered guy replied that father is not in a condition to. Showing the notebook, Seona said that judging from the records, it seems he was a significant figure in this district. He replied that after the shock of burnout, father lost his job motivation and their mom. His passion had been missing ever since. The girl said that if they promised them one thing, they might be able to get their father's passion back. If they return his father's passion and ensure his safety as a representative of the district, would Paikon promise to accompany them on their trek and help them with their mission? Shocked by their words, Paikon looked at them in surprise, not knowing what to answer him. At this time, a mutant came to the weapons market of Rokum District 1. He said it was the only item worth buying here, but he wouldn't sell it to him. The blacksmith replied that the rule of the city states that no one but the blacksmith can own this weapon. The mutant replied only weapons forged from this steel can harm test subjects. Why should he listen to him and follow this stupid rule? The frightened blacksmith replied that he must be new here, so he doesn't know anything. It's Lord Roxane's rule. Grinning, the mutant asked Roxane what it is. It's some kind of food. At this moment, the mutant released its tentacles and revealed a belly with huge fangs. Pointing the huge fangs towards the blacksmith, he grinned evilly, saying that he was already hungry. The frightened blacksmith shouted that he would sell him the weapon. Let him live. At that moment, a man appeared near them, his heavy footsteps breaking rocks. Lord Roxane himself appeared in front of the bloodthirsty mutant and frowned at him. The frightened blacksmith shouted Lord Roxane. He realized that he had been caught breaking a rule. At that moment, he received a powerful crushing blow and cried out in horror. The blacksmith was flipped in the air and fell to the ground with a thud. The mutant grinned maliciously and glared predatorily as he watched the scene. Holding out his hand, Lord Roxane said that anyone who breaks this rule must be executed. The mutant replied that he, Roxane, was just patrolling the streets in the Borderlands. How dare he try to act cool? The reason they don't sell this steel to others must be because this weapon poses a threat to them as well. The mutant grabbed the weapon dropped by the blacksmith. After a moment's hesitation, the monster swung the weapon toward the Lord. The deadly weapon was rapidly approaching Roxane, threatening to destroy her. But the Lord did not even move and did not try to dodge the weapon flying at him. When it reached Roxane's head, it did not do him any harm, but simply bent. The useless bent weapon bounced off the Lord's head and crashed to the ground. The enraged Roxane glared at the mutant with fury. Puffs of steam emanated from his body. The shocked mutant stared dumbfounded at the Lord, not realizing what was happening. At that moment, Roxane headed towards him, breaking the sidewalk tiles with heavy steps. The mutant shouted that he was the best test subject who had reached level 3 in one day. He is the one who will own the top area. Moments later, he unleashed deadly tentacles. But after reaching Roxane's body, the powerful tentacles did not harm him either. Lord easily threw them aside and looked fiercely at his opponent. The shocked mutant fiercely cursed in horror and screamed out what it was. At that moment, Roxane came close to the bloodthirsty monster. The enraged mutant fiercely clenched his teeth and shouted, "How dare he!" In the same instant, it opened its belly with a huge fanged maw in front of the Lord. Standing right in front of the monster Lord, Roxane clenched his fist to strike. A moment later, he struck a deadly blow and a massive explosion erupted. Fragments of shattered stones and blood spatter flew in all directions. Huge holes gaped in the destroyed neighboring buildings. The mutant was crushed. He lay on the ground and the remnants of his body slowly rose up, carried by the wind. In the center of the huge crater, Lord Roxane stood with his fists clenched fiercely and his eyes glaring.